This is Derek's O'Reilly Auto Parts story.
After the third time jump-starting my car, I finally realized my battery was dying. So I stopped by O'Reilly to have it checked. They tested it right there in the parking lot. It was bad, real bad. But they helped me find the right battery for my car and even installed it for free. Now my car starts like new.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
What you doing?
Designing my new 2021 Nissan Kicks online in the Kicks Color Studio. I give each a special name. This one's electric blue, orange, red, white. I call it the gumball machine. You think it's me?
I feel like you're more of a red velvet guy.
Limitless possibilities. With over 100 million available color combinations and Bose Personal Plus system in the boldly new 2021 Nissan Kicks. Bose is a registered trademark of the Bose Corporation. Color combinations include interior and exterior colors. Customization is an available feature subject to availability at participating Nissan dealers. See dealer for details.
Your product, faced with hard luck. Faced with hard luck. Card shots, thieves, murderers with hard luck. Pimps and card shots, thieves, murderers with hard luck. Your product, faced with hard luck. Faced with hard luck. Card shots, thieves, murderers with hard luck. Pimps and card shots, thieves, murderers with hard luck.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Hard Luck Show. I'm your certified, qualified West Side host, Steve Lucky Luciano. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, you've tuned into the greatest show on earth. It's the Hard Luck Show, coming at you from the bunker in Southern California. On my left, my co-host and partner
is Chumahan Bowen, American Indian, Southern Californian, elegant barbarian, here with another great show again.
Yeah!
Black nigga from the Comptown.
Comptown. Hey! Hey! The Hard Luck Show!
Yeah!
Coming at ya!
Just a little funk. What you know about MC Ren?
Yeah!
Come on.
That's Chumahan's jam today.
Yeah.
And on audio and sound, old Blue Eyes,
Sean Lewis, certified audio professional,
yeah,
engineer for the heart. Look, show.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah, come on.
Get it, Sean. Get it, Sean. Yeah, we're tuned up and ready. Ready for whatever.
Bro.
With a guest on today.
Bro.
We have a guest that's made quite a long journey. This is a long journey that this gentleman's been on. He's traveled a ways to get here today. We want to introduce our guest for the Hard Luck Show today. Let's welcome in Clint.
Clint. And you know, we usually yell, but let's let the essence of Clint stir. Here he comes. I see a C. Yeah. An L. An I. An N. And a T. Here comes Big Clint. Yeah.
Big Clint.
Welcome
Clint. To the show, Big Clint.
Come on. Yeah. Hey, man, so...
Hey, Clint's filling up those sleeves of the T-shirt pretty well, so we have Big Clint, that's going to work for him.
Right.
All right, Big Clint.
Hey, when he... This was his selection.
Man,
Yeah.
this is great.
I don't know that we've had anybody pick that yet.
No, that's a classic.
Excellent.
That's a
bro.
class selection. Hey, Clint, what made you choose this?
Hey, you know what, man? When I was in reception, I was with this cat. You know, I became friends with this dude, and he was like kind of my age, and he had gotten sentenced to 89 years, double life, right?
Double
for
life.
busting out a cop. You know, he did a robbery or something and shot at the cops during a high speed chase and whatnot. You know. And he was like, you know, I'd always be talking to this dude and like become really good friends with this dude. And I remember he used to like sing this song in his cell and in the shower, you know what I mean? And it would kind of like set a mood on the whole tier, you know what I mean? And he would kind of go off and start singing this, you know what I mean? And I always thought about that. And I remember I did a show a while back and they asked me the same thing, what's your song? And I couldn't think of anything. I was like, I don't know, man. So when I started like listening to your guys' episodes and I heard you always ask people like what that question is, I thought of him, you know what I mean? I thought of my boy, His name is Alan Balmer. And yeah, man. And so I thought about that.
That's crazy. Yeah. So he would get up, he would be in the shower and he'd start singing Phil Collins in the air tonight. And it would just set the mood.
It would.
God
What
damn.
year was this?
It's 2005.
Okay. Okay.
And what did they say? What did they say you did? What was the charge?
For me?
Yeah, while you were there.
Oh, I was in. Well, that was in AdSeg. That was in the AdSeg unit there in Tracy and L-Wing, and I was in AdSeg for participation in a riot. Is what got me in the
participation in a riot.
Participation in a riot.
What
in
happened?
the joint.
Oh.
In the joint.
Oh,
I'm talking about.
Right. We're not talking about Black Lives Matter. Just
no,
recently.
that's in prison.
No, yeah.
So
no,
I think they're okay. So let's go back a little bit. Let's just give us a rundown. Where you come from? Where'd you grow up, Clint?
Yeah.
And how'd you kind of end up catching a prison? What kind of take us there?
Yeah, man. First, so I grew up in kind of a rural. I've been listening to like a lot of you guys' shows. It seems like everybody you guys got on the show is like from LA, big city. You know what I mean? And that was not my story, man. And I grew up in kind of a rural little area. I grew up out in this up kind of going towards Lake Tahoe, kind of right in between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe.
Weed?
No. South of Weed. But this little town called Somerset, right?
Somerset.
Not a lot of people. It's like
they know about Northern California.
Yeah. It's like population like 300. You know what I mean? It's like there's nothing. There's like a bar, a post office, and like a little corner store. You know what I mean?
What's it like growing up in a small joint like that?
It was. It kind of sucked, man. It was not that great. You know what I mean? Well, we didn't really have a lot of money either. We lived, way out in the cuts. You know what I'm saying?
Did you like have a house way out in the cuts? Was it a farm?
If you could call it, no, it was a house. If you could call it that, it was more like a studio apartment sitting on the side of a hill, kind of. You know what I mean? It was like,
damn.
There was no foundation under the house. You know what I'm saying? The whole house is propped up on like car jacks and cinder blocks and shit. You know what I'm
Get
saying?
the fuck out of here.
And yeah, we didn't have no neighbors. You know what I mean? Our closest neighbors like 2 miles away.
Wow. And how many? And who was all in the house?
It was me, my mom, and my dad at first. That was it. And then my dad like ended up building onto the house. You know what I mean? He ended up kind of taking off. So it was just like my home life. It was just a lot of fighting and shit. My mom and dad, they didn't get along. It was a lot of drinking, partying. You know what I mean?
Right.
A lot of domestic violence. You know what I mean? Fucking my mom stabbed my dad with the fork, and coffee pots flying through the window, and you know what I mean, just just gnarly shit every night. Breaking, punching holes through the window, cutting his hand all up. Cops coming, dragging my dad out in the parking lot, beating him up out in the driveway. You know what I mean, hauling him off to jail. You know what I mean. That was the
how old were you when you were seeing all this shit go down?
Oh, these are like my earliest memories. You know what I mean. So before that, we lived in Modesto. So that's where I was born. I was born in Modesto.
Right.
And my parents, they met each other like in San Jose or Santa Cruz. That's kind of where the area that they're from. So I don't even really remember anything about Modesto. My earliest memories were of that, you know what I mean? Of that type of shit going on. So like 4 or 5 years old, the shit was going on. So yeah, my dad ended up taking off, he went like to Montana or Idaho or something like that. And so it was just me and my mom out there. And yeah, fucking for a while, we didn't have a car, you know what I mean? We didn't have shit out there. Or, it would freeze in the wintertime, our pipes would break, you know what I mean? We didn't have no running water. We were like heating up water on a stove to take a bath with. Shit like this,
Damn. So a lot of people don't know anything about being that broke.
Right.
That's a real broke.
Yeah.
And what does that do for you? Like, how does that impact you? Or like, what is the positive and what's the negative of having an upbringing where it's like you're that broke in the beginning?
I don't know. I wanted to tell this story because I was fun. I was listening to the show you guys did with Jack, and he was talking about cattle wrestling. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Gentleman Jack.
I could relate to that because when we were out there, my dad took off with the car. You know what I mean? He left us out there with no car, and my mom called her dad, her biological dad, my grandpa, and said we needed help. We don't got a car to get to the store, like nothing. You know what I mean? And so I guess my mom, back in the day, she used to do what they call it, like barrel racing or barrel riding, like with the horse, you know what I mean, like horse riding, and like in the fairs and shit, you know what I mean, like she used to do that. And so my grandpa was kind of like a kind of a dick move on his part. He went to an auction in Fresno and got us a horse at an auction and sent a horse up to our fucking place up there.
And was like, we need a car. And they sent a horse with no carriage, just a horse.
At an auction.
Dude, it sounds like we're talking about 1775 or something.
Can you imagine?
Okay.
Hey, no, and we fucking rode that thing too.
Yeah.
We rode that shit down to the little store, get little groceries and shit. My mom would like take it down to the bar. You mean we'd be down there? She'd be down there drinking and shit.
You can't. I don't know if you can get a ticket for being drunk and riding a horse.
True.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a DUI. Because the horse ain't drunk.
No. Yeah.
Well, the car ain't drunk either.
Yeah, but you're controlling it. I mean, you can't make a horse run into fire.
That's true. It's true.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what it was like early on.
Damn. So you're like almost kind of like a real cowboy in a sense, in some ways.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, now like, when you talk to other people now and you hear about their upbringings, right? Like, and then you tell them, yeah, well, we had to ride a horse into town. Do they trip out, or what kind of perspective does it give you that other people don't have?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't, have a chance. I don't really. I end up not like talking about that a lot with a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, especially when I started getting locked up. You know what I mean? I was locked up with the people that had a lot different experience. You know what I mean? Most people that would like grew up in like an inner city, and I think I was kind of embarrassed about it for a long time. I didn't really want nobody to know about that. You know what I mean? I was always like trying to play the part. I was more attracted to the streets, and so I guess I'll back up a little bit. Let me see. So yeah, like the thing with my mom, you know what I mean? Like, so it was like, I started working at a really early age too. So there's a lot of vineyards and stuff out there, right? There was a lot. So like, I think it was like fourth grade, like the summer vacation of fourth grade, like I had to start working out in the vineyards with my mom.
Just picking grapes?
Picking grapes, pruning, running drip line, you know what I mean? Chemicals, fertilizing, you know what I mean? Planting, like all that shit. Yeah, just working out in the field, you know what I mean? So that was like the closest thing. It was like about a mile down the road from where we lived, there was a big vineyard down there,
for like wineries eventually.
Yeah, exactly. There was wine. There was a lot of wineries out there, a lot of wine tasting. A lot of people come there from the Bay Area to go wine tasting. It's like wine country, you know what I mean? It's like the wine belt of the county, kind of right there,
And then, like, what don't people know about fucking picking grapes and shit like that? What's something that like most people wouldn't like? When they drink wine and they're like, "Oh, that was a good year," what don't they know about what really happens out there with them grapes?
Man, well, most of the people that are out there picking those grapes and making that wine are not really having a good time doing it.
Yeah, well,
right. Well, that sounds
enjoy
about
that
right.
wine,
yeah. Right?
No, there was some things about it were kind of fun. You know what I mean? Like harvest season was always like kind of a fun time out there because they would always throw a big party whenever like the harvest came in. You know what I mean? And the picking, like people get paid a little bit more when you're picking. So when you're just working out the regular, I remember I was making $3.25 an hour.
Damn,
that's what I was getting paid. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't able to keep I had to give my check to my mom. As soon as I got my check, it was like I had to turn it over to her. She gave me like a little bit. I go buy something, you know what I mean, a CD or something with it, you know what I mean. Right. But I had to turn that over to my mom, and rightly she needed it, you know what I mean.
Sure, same way when I was young.
Yeah, right. So I was just working at a really young age, and but yeah, there was like they would like those vineyards, the people that own the vineyard, they would have like these big like grape stomping parties, and all the kids would be out there in the buckets, you know what I mean, stomping on the grapes, making the wine. They'd have live bands out there, you know what I mean, just a huge part of the whole town, just huge, hundreds of people out there, you know what I mean. And it was kind of fun. And all the people that worked out there, all the guys that worked out there, we'd all get invited, and we wouldn't have to pay for like drinks and shit like that, you know what I mean. It was all kind of so there was some things that was kind of cool about it. I had a quad and a rifle, you know what I mean, for a minute. And I would be riding around the vineyards, have my little rifle, my little 22 rifle on the back of the quad, and me mobbing around out in the cuts, you know what I mean, from job site to job site, you know what I mean, from vineyard to vineyard and shit. And sort of some things that were kind of cool about it.
Yeah, I mean, so dude, Steve, that's a lot different in some ways than the way you grew up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you hear that, right, like what's some things that stand out to you that are like, you know what, that's so unique. That would give somebody a cool perspective, or that might give somebody an interesting way of looking at.
I look at guys like that. Guys like him, man. They by the time they get to the city or by the time they get to the places that we're at, these guys are better equipped for living in survival and shit. They just because they know shit because they had to do shit like It's usually those cats that are putting the rest of us up on game because they had to like figure other shit out that we were just busy fucking bullshitting the whole time.
Right.
You guys had to fucking, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Sean, when you hear
a lot more MacGyvers coming from his side,
I would say that. Yeah.
No,
is that true? Like you could fix like a fucking radio with like Scotch tape and a fucking toenail clipper,
hook it up to the bolt on this.
Sean, when you hear about this kind of thing, like I mean, what do you? Because I'm listening to it. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to shortchange the hardship of it. I mean, I grew up. I had some hardship. All of us here sitting here had some hardships, but. I'm also looking at like, man, half of what you sounded like, it sounded a little bit like freedom. Like you had a quad, you had a gun, there was some grape stomping. Yeah, you had to hand your check over. Yeah, your fucking shoes were tracks or from fucking Kmart and fell apart real fast. But at the same time, you had places, I mean, you could take off into the countryside. You had some time.
Yeah, no, it was cool, man. There were rivers and lakes and shit out there. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. It was cool. You know, there was, so there was some good things about it, you know. But yeah, you know, like, I wasn't really well adjusted, you know what I mean? To like the school system and shit, you know what I mean? I think, seeing my parents fight a lot and then, and then she got with other guys and it was the same kind of scene, you know what I mean? All the time. And I think at first, you know what I mean? Before I started going to school, I kind of like really had like withdrawn into myself a little bit, you know? But by the time I got to school, I think I learned, you know what I mean, a way to get some attention. You know, I turned into the class clown like kind of really quick, you know what I mean, and I figured out this is how I can make people laugh. You know what I mean? This is how I can shock people. You know what I mean?
When did it hit you that you might be the class clown? When did it hit you? You're like, hey, I got some shtick.
Very early on, like very early. You know what I mean? Like. Yeah, man. Like,
what did you do? Like, you put a whoopee cushion on someone's pants?
Oh, you know what I mean? Just rolling across the floor, drawing on the wall. You know what I mean? Just vandalizing the fucking shit.
You know what I mean? Everybody be like, he's cool.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean?
Doing all this shit nobody else wants to do.
You know,
fuck, man. I had to. That happened to me. I was a class clown, and I had the fucking bus driver wrote a letter to my dad. Like when the bus driver writes a letter in her own.
Up.
All the X-rated language I was using in 6th grade, 2nd grade.
Yeah, and so like back to like, you know what I mean, the transition, you know what I mean, from like that rural life. So like one thing, you know, I think like my mom was like really trying to instill like a hard work ethic in me. Like you got to work, you know what I mean? Like work, fucking work. You know what I'm saying? And you know, so that was like drilled into me really early, like, you know what I mean? And you know, I think it had the opposite effect on me that, you know, that she wanted it to, or like what they wanted it to, because it really just gave me it made me feel like that's all I was good for. You know what I mean? Like this is what I got to look forward to in life, fucking working for $3 an hour, turning my check over, like this is it. You know what I'm saying? Like fuck this, you know?
Right.
I'm gonna go try to find, there gotta be something else, you know what I mean? There's gotta be a better way to make some money or something, you know what I mean? And so that's like one thing, like with my mom, you know what I mean? She didn't grow up in that type of environment either. You know, she's from San Jose, and so like she lived more of a street life than I did, you know what I'm saying? And so like my uncles and my grandfather, who I call not my biological grandfather, but you know, he's like my godfather, who I call my dad. Like these dudes they're old school biker types and shit, you know what I mean? So I had one uncle that was in Lompoc for a bunch of, you know what I mean, a bunch of bank robberies. I had another uncle that was fighting a RICO case. My grandpa had been in and out of the pen, you know what I mean? And these were like, and I would hear these stories that my mom would talk about, oh yeah, you know, back when we did that, and like talking about the shit that they pulled off, you know what I mean? And I'm thinking like, this sounds better, you know what I mean? Like this sounds better than what the fuck.
The old life sounds better than what we're doing now. Right? They were having fun back then.
Yeah. These are legends.
So, you know, I started seeking that out, I think, you know what I mean? And
hell yeah.
I learned some lessons like really, because, you know, you know what I mean? When I started trying to, you know, try my hand at some of that shit, you know what I mean? I was not very fucking street smart, you know what I mean?
Right. What was the first one you tried?
What
was one that just went wrong where you're like, fuck, I didn't know jack shit when I was trying that? Because I read this book about a jewelry thief. His first hit was a safe from a mini golf.
Right.
And he didn't know anything about opening safes. So he broke in and he got it, and then all of a sudden he had to drag this like 1,000-pound safe around. Did you have anything like that?
No, I didn't do anything like that really sophisticated. I think so. Like the first thing that I got put in a juvenile hall for, first thing I got arrested for was going into a clothing store and just grabbing a handful of clothes, you know what I mean? All the shit, just loading up an old armful of rack of shit that I wanted and just kind of walked out, you know? And,
how'd you get caught?
Well, the manager came out and was like, hey, you know, and I took off running down this little street. My friend's house was like right up the way. I ran up into his house like, hey, look at all this shit I got. We started going through the clothes, picking out which ones we wanted. I put a jacket on and stuffed a bunch of these shirts into my pockets, and then I took off. Like, you know, I let a couple hours went by. I figured I was good. But I got pulled over, you know, and they searched me. The store manager came and ID'd me and all that shit, you know, and so they called that, you know, so that was, you know, I was doing like, it was petty shit, you know what I mean? So I got arrested for that. They took me down to like the juvenile hall. They called my mom, just my mom come pick me up, you know what I mean? I didn't have to do time for it that time, you know what I mean? Right. But that was the first, so then, so like, you know, my mom had to come pick me up or whatever, you know? And then, so what happens, they gave me a court date. They gave me like a court date. I had to like go to court, you know, whatever. I was still going to school and stuff. This is when I was like 14 or 15. Well, then what I was doing is I started getting into like dope real early too. I mean, I was smoking pot like a lot of, it was very accessible, you know what I mean? So I was like kind of middleman in some speed, you know what I mean, for like for kids at my school, older kids, you know what I mean. I was kind of like hooking people up, you know what I mean. I wasn't like slinging it myself, but I knew who the connect was, and I was like doing little middleman shit, you know. And so someone had told on me for that, you know what I mean. And I showed up to school one day, and someone came up to me like, hey, like he knew who I was. He's like, hey, is your last name this? You know what I mean? And I was like, yeah. He's like, hey, that cop over there is looking for you right there. You know what I mean? There's asking questions about that. And I was already, you know what I mean, getting high and shit. So I was like, oh shit, I'm out. You know what I mean? So I left and I went over to I was like staying with a friend's house for a while, quit going to school, all that. And I had gotten a bench for it. So I missed my court date for the, for stealing the clothes, you know, shoplifting. Well, they charge, so that's a thing, right? You think that's a shoplifting, but it's actually what they call is a second-degree commercial burglary, right?
Right.
So it's like this, you know, so if you go into a store with money in your pocket and you spontaneously steal something, it's a misdemeanor or petty theft, you know what I mean? But if you go into a store and you don't have any money in your pocket, that means you went in there with it planned out, like you were planning to steal something, and that's, you know, intent or whatever.
But you know what? I'll tell you, a law like that could have only been written with separating the classes of people in mind. You walk in with money, you're going to get a little fucking smack.
You walk in here broke, we're going to fucking hammer you down. You never walk in here again.
Get ready to start making some fucking license plates, motherfucker.
Right.
Yeah. So anyways, I ended up getting picked up like a couple weeks later, you know what I mean? And I had a warrant because I didn't go to the court day, so they took me down to juvenile hall, you know what I mean? Went to court. I think they gave me like 90 days. They were asking me like, you know what I mean, where do you get who's your plug, you know, all this. And I didn't know, you know what I mean? I didn't know nothing. And so like, well, you know, if you don't want to start talking, you got this warrant. I was like, fuck it, man, you know? And so that was the first thing that ended me up in juvenile hall. I think I did like 90 days, you know what I mean? I got sentenced like 90 days or something like that. And then, yeah, you know, well, I think that's like, and you know, like I was saying, you know, I think that's when I started kind of learning some lessons. I started learning the lingo, you know what I mean? I started, you know, incarcerated with other kids that were from kind of different backgrounds and learning, you know what I mean? Learning the, you know what I mean? The customs, you know what I mean? And just
now
like,
you're becoming a criminal.
Exactly, you know?
Right,
and,
learning the culture.
Learning the culture and you know what I mean? And whatnot. And, I ended up having to go to this like probation school, you know, it was like right downstairs from juvenile hall. It was like in the basement of the juvenile hall, you know? And the thing was, the whole model was too, right? Like you come, they don't strip search, but they search you down, they pass you down your pockets, make you empty out your pockets, go through your backpack, metal detector, wand you down, all that shit before you even come in the door. And there's a probation officer right there. And so if you get enough trouble in class, you get enough like points taken away or write-ups or whatever like that, they could just come in and arrest you and give you a probation violation, you know what I mean, for whatever, and put you in the elevator and send you upstairs to juvenile hall.
Take you right back upstairs.
Book you in and you spend a night or 2 nights in juvenile hall and then they send you back down to class wearing the same clothes you got arrested in, and it's like, you know, okay, try again, you know?
Damn.
Hey, it's funny, man. You always hear these people talking about like the school to prison pipeline, you know what I mean? What was the school to elevator prison pipeline, you know?
Right.
Anyways,
designed to institutionalize motherfuckers.
Yeah. So I was going to that school. I was barely out like fucking a month. So the thing with that school is too, everybody is on probation, right? But we're not allowed to hang out with each other. That's like one of the rules of probation.
Right.
Is you're not allowed to hang out with other people that are on probation.
But whatever, you guys are in the same school.
We're in the same school, and the school that we're part of, it's like not even part of like the county school. So like the buses don't come by there. We got to take like public transportation and like walk out of there. You know what I mean? Wait for our parents to pick us up or whatever. You know what I mean? So like when we leave the campus, and they would like follow us around. So we had like a little spot down at the fairgrounds where we'd all kind of kick it and smoke and whatever, you know. And the POs would always be driving around town looking for us. And if they saw us kicking with us, they would violate us. You know what I mean?
Can you imagine that? Yeah. Can you imagine being a grown adult and your job is this is your job?
Looking for kids that aren't supposed to be hanging out together.
You're looking for kids, driving around looking for kids. It's fucking crazy.
Right.
Yeah, anyways.
So then I'm assuming though, like at some point you're like, you stepped up your game. You're like, all right, I got through this. Now I'm going to go to the next level in the culture.
A little bit, you know what I mean? A little bit, yeah. So I ended up becoming pretty good friends with this dude at that school. And he lived out on the there was a Miwok reservation out there, you know? Yeah. And so I became cool with him, you know what I mean? I started kicking it out there on the res a lot. And his older brother, well, they weren't from there. They were from Sacramento, you know what I mean? From West Sacramento. And his older...
Wait a minute. Slow down. No. You were hanging out on the Miwok reservation?
Yeah. I stayed out there. I was like practically living out there for.
Listen, I'm American Indian. And I ain't gonna take any offense to anything you say. So I just want, because I'm always usually the one trying to explain reservations and whatever, and a lot of people don't know about it.
Yeah,
and it's very rare to hear somebody say, "Yeah, I actually lived on one for a while, and I was practically." So what kind of shit did you see there? What was it like on the Miwok reservation?
It was an experience, you know what I mean? Man, there wasn't a lot out there, bro. You know what I mean? It was like a lot of people just had their trailers out there. Some of them didn't even have like water hooked up to their trailer. There was like a little community center where people would leave like pastries and cakes and stuff in, you know. Every once in a while they might have like a little community gathering, but like people just like kind of stayed out there.
Yeah.
Went into town, you know what I mean? What, not a lot different really from how I grew up where my mom lives, you know what I mean? It was almost kind of similar. We just go into town for some groceries and like come back and post up, you know what I mean?
Did you ever meet any mean Indians?
Well, my homeboy, he was
He's a mean Indian.
And his older brother too, man. So like that's the thing. His older brother was from like a really well-known neighborhood, you know what I mean? Like a very like generations deep kind of neighborhood, you know what I mean? And I started kind of going in to the city with them, into that neighborhood, and it was, you know, for me, for being from the country and a white kid too, you know what I mean? And he's not a white, you know, mostly like Chicano kind of barrio, you know what I mean?
Right.
No, I just kind of learned to kind of keep my mouth shut like real early on, you know what I mean? And just kind of watch and observe. But you know, like the kids that were like our generation, that were like our age, were pretty cool, you know what I mean? And like I got in pretty tight with them, you know what I mean? I wasn't scared to, you know, go from the shoulders with somebody, you know what I mean? I was always like a little bit of a scrapper, and so like that was but like the older generation, like the older brothers and the tios and shit, you know what I mean, were kind of always kind of vibing me out all the time, you know what I mean? But you know, I spent I started spending more and more time going to that neighborhood, and people kind of started getting to know my face there and stuff, you know. And yeah, man, I learned some new moves, you know what I mean, for sure. Like, you know, we're doing some new stuff, you know. I learned that, you know, basically, you know, the items that were on the menu, you know what I mean, were guns, jewelry, and cash. You know what I mean? These things were very easily liquidated. You know what I mean? Well, cash was always you know what I mean? And then somebody always wanted a strap, and jewelry was it was very easy to turn jewelry into something else. You know what I mean? And
or
cash,
whatever else.
Yeah. And so, you know, I learned how to do. I learned some new moves. You know, basically. So that, you know, that didn't really last too long. So I ended up catching a violation for truancy. You know what I mean? I quit going to school. I was just kicking out there on the res or whatever, you know what I mean? Not showing up, you know what I mean? And that's another thing about the res too. The cops are not supposed to come out there. You know what I mean? They got to get like a federal warrant to like go out there and shit.
They ain't got no power out there.
No, yeah.
That's right. That's federal land.
Yeah.
You're like an outlaw, dude.
Yeah. And it was cool too. That the thing that was really cool about that reservation. So the one entrance was on the El Dorado County side, and then there was another entrance coming from the Sacramento County side. So you could come in one side of the county and go out the other side of the county. And it was cool. There wasn't a lot out there, but we had like, you know, there was some good part. You could like get a big fire going out there and shit. You know what I mean? Invite people and like have a music, have, you know, people out there with their cars and the trunks open, and you know what I mean, music going on. And it was fun, you know. It was cool, you know.
Hey, did you ever see like anybody sing any Indian songs or anything when you were out there? Or a shapeshifter? You ever see a shapeshifter? Or an owl ever call your name?
No. I heard some stories, you know what I mean? There was a couple older guys, you know what I mean, that we could like kind of go over to that would, you know, we'd drink and smoke, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would hear some of like the stories, you know what I mean, the tales. Like, I got invited to go do some sweats a couple times, you know what I mean? But no, I don't know if I can, yeah.
So then at what point did you get like serious time? Like when did they hand you serious?
That's the thing, I never really got serious time. That's why I was kind of nervous coming on the show. I was like listening
Don't
to all
be nervous
these.
about it.
Oh,
I got people on here that got done no time.
Yeah,
Dude,
Schmitty,
Schmitty had 0 time.
Yeah, no, nervous probably isn't the right word for it, but it just, you know what I mean? I was listening to, the interviews you did with fucking, with Jack and Bertho and, you know what I mean, and Danny and all these guys. These dudes are like my role models, you know what I'm saying? And I did do some time, but I did like petty time, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, mostly,
How did you get hooked up with Danny then?
Well, I met him at UC Berkeley.
Right. So did you go into the underground scholar program?
Yeah, exactly.
How did you get into that?
Okay, so let me get there. So anyways, let me see. Should I back up or should I just talk about how I got into underground scholars?
Don't worry.
We'll back up. You started getting into more trouble.
Yeah. I started getting into more trouble. I was doing kind of shit like this. You know what I mean? Doing little licks. You know what I mean? Breaking and entering. Stuff like this.
With this neighborhood, you're kind of doing it with these guys.
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes. You know. Okay. Yeah. We say that.
Hey, how does one of the older cats vibe you out? Like, was there ever a time where they said, "All right, you can come with us, but you gotta be the one on the front"?
Well, it was like, you know what I mean? What was always like kind of reinforced, you know what I mean? Because I started kind of dressing the part too, you know what I mean? And like, seeing like the types of shoes and the colors and shit, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I started kind of dressing the part too. And it was like made very clear to me, like, if somebody hits you up, you know what I mean? Like, you can't say you're from this hood, you know what I mean? This is not, you're not from here, you know what I mean? Like, this is not, I don't know where the fuck you're from, you know what I mean? But this is the hood, you know what I mean? Like, so don't be saying, even like some of the younger homies, like that weren't necessarily in yet, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? It was very serious, you know what I mean? That was taken very seriously.
Hey, Steve, speak to that for a second. So here we got a guy, right, from a different area, right? And he's coming in and he's actually doing the work and he's actually being cool and he's getting integrated into this neighborhood. And then there's still this place where they're like, hey, like, don't say you're from here because you're not. How does the neighborhood, like, what are some of the politics involved with dealing with an issue where this is a good guy, yet we got some rules?
Well, I mean, for one, the race thing is going to set you back a little ways.
Yeah.
Right.
For your color. So that's already going to sit you at a distance. And then even if you do everything, you still got that same color on you.
Yeah.
And it's going to, you're just not going to walk into that situation easily. Or else everybody would be walking into the neighborhood and claiming all sorts of shit.
Yeah, because...
So, like, to be somebody white or black and be claiming that neighborhood, you would either had to have spent a lot of time with them, grew up with them. You went over and beyond what they were doing just to be accepted.
Right.
It's kind of like that. So the older guys probably vibing them, and the younger guys just trying to protect their neighborhood.
Right.
This is an outsider. This is somebody that's not like us, didn't necessarily grow up with us.
Yeah.
But it's like he's saying, the longer you spend time there, kind of start dressing the part. I mean, eventually, if you stay on that track, you're going to become them.
Yeah, and I ended up not becoming that. You know what I mean? Barely, but let me see. Where was I?
The older homies, the younger homies.
You're doing more. You're hitting licks. You're doing
doing little shit. You know what I mean?
But they're reminding you, hey, you're not from here.
Kind of, yeah. And so I ended up getting arrested again. So I ended up getting a violation for some like stupid shit, for truancy, for not showing up to school. I got violated. I quit going to the probation school. You know what I mean? I was on probation. I got a truancy, and then I got somebody reported me saying that they saw me hanging out with one of these cats. You know what I mean? I had I got reported, and then. When I finally did go to report, you know what I mean? When I finally, my mom didn't even know where I was some of those times, you know what I mean? Like, I was I was gone, you know what I mean? I was doing my own thing. And he called me in and maybe take a piss test. I took a piss test, you know what I mean? Failed that for marijuana. So my return to custody was for a truancy, violating my terms of like socialism. I can't remember what the thing was, but for hanging out with another kid that was on probation,
right?
And a dirty urine analysis, right?
Weed, which is now legal, so
yeah. And so I went to juvenile hall that time. I was supposed to do 30 days in juvenile hall and then 30 days on house arrest, right? Well, when I went into juvenile hall that time, I had been kicking it with these different people, and I seen some people that I knew or that I knew my homeboy and his older brother, and I kind of clicked up with the Chicano kids in the system there, so I was kicking it with them, and then so somebody ended up kind of ran a nut check on me. You know what I mean? Early on, there was this older dude. He was he was from Los Angeles, and he got busted in Tahoe with a stolen car and a car full of strap, all this stuff. You know what I mean? And he had already been to YA, and he was coming back out to court for some. They brought some more charges up on him or something like that. And he was so he had already been to YA. This big old fucking. You know what I mean? Big old fucking dude, you know, this back when they had weights and shit in YA. And he kind of came up on me. He's like, oh, what you think? You know what I mean? You think you're just this little white fucking, you know what I mean? Whatever, you know what I mean? Like, who the fuck, you know what I mean? Little wannabe, fuck all this shit, you know what I mean? And I kind of was like, well, you know what the fuck you want to do about it? You know what I mean? And he was like, all right, you know. And then as we're lining up to go back to our cell, he walked by me and he called me a chavala. And he's like, you fucking chavala. You know
What's
what I mean?
a chavala?
Right.
It's like
punk.
Yeah, it's like a punk, yeah. And I said, man, fuck you, dude. You know what I mean? And I stepped back and I cracked him, you know, a couple times. And when I did, you know, when I did that, I used kind of the derogatory term for where he was from, you know what I mean? And as I was firing on him, you know, and knocked him back, he stumbled, he knocked over a bunch of chairs and shit. And then he got me too, you know, the cops grabbed me and slammed me up against the wall. And while I was restrained, he got up and came and just got me with a good one, you know, just, ripped my whole lip off my fucking face almost, you know what I mean? But when I did that, when I hit him, I guess, you know, he had to go to the outside hospital and shit because he got like a hairline fracture in his, like his little bone right here where your temple is or whatever, you know? And he had to get like a little splint put in his face or whatever. So they charged me, I got an in-house charge for that. They gave me a DA referral for that. And I got charged with for battery of great bodily injury.
They picked it up?
They picked it up. The county picked it up.
Fuck.
They charged me with battery of great bodily injury and a gang enhancement. You know what I'm saying?
Now check this out. Let's back up a minute.
Lay the land,
dude.
Because this is how he got the name Clint the Splint.
But it's so fucked up, bro, is that any type of crime that happens in prison, they can take that crime, write it up however they want with whatever they want. They'll have motherfucking convicts testifying on you.
Man.
Video, whatever. And they'll run all that shit to the DA of the county, wherever that corrections facility sits.
Right.
And they'll be like, we got this guy in here for such and such, and look what he's doing in there.
Dead to rights.
Look at this motherfucker. He's in there for 3 years for this, and now... And you're sitting there waiting. And when they pick this thing up, you're just sweating, man. Because when they pick this stuff up, you're getting more charges. You ain't going home. And after they're done picking it up, and you're hit with those, then the institution is going to hit you with even more shit. You get what I'm saying? So you're getting you're getting more time from the CDC. You're getting another charge added. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you can't win. And you can say anything you want, but the board's going to decide.
It's not like a trial.
It's not. There's nothing. You go in there and they put the case together they want, and you don't have shit to say. This is what we got them on. Check it out. You want to pick it up. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. Anyway, so they...
Wait a second. Yeah. Since we're right here. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how big is this? I mean, how tall... Is this dude taller than you?
I mean... In my memory, you know what I mean? I remember him, this dude was like kind of scary looking. I mean, he was already all tatted up.
He's already a grown man. Huh?
Yeah. You know what I mean? I was like, 16. I think I might have been 15 or 16 at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And were you the only white dude in there for the most part in that area? Anyway?
No, it was mostly whites and Latinos in that juvenile hall right there.
But why did he single you out? Do you think?
Because I was kicking it with a group that was his rival for one, and I was white, you know what I mean? And he wanted and you know what I mean? And he wanted to show my homeboys that I wasn't down, you know what I mean? That I wasn't with it, you know what I mean? He wanted to fucking, you know what I mean? He was testing me.
And you knew, right? You were hanging out with your homeboys, and you knew, like, I got to take this all the way to the wall.
Yeah.
If I'm going to retain my friendship, my trust with my homies, I'm going to have to just fucking straight up square up and take this all the way to the fucking wall.
Pretty much, yeah.
God damn, man. God damn.
Every now and then it's like that.
Yeah.
God, Clint the Splint.
Clint wasn't waiting, though. He took off first.
Yeah, no. He's no fool. But hey, like he said sometimes you stand like this. You could put your head down and go, and then all of a sudden you just
sometimes that has to happen, too. Yeah. But go ahead, dog.
So they sent me to this... just like low level white. So this is my second time ever being in trouble, and this is like my, you know what I mean? This is like my first like violent. And that's something I want to emphasize too. All the violent shit that I ever had was all in custody. You know what I'm saying? Like I was not really, you know what I mean, a super violent dude on the streets doing kinds of crazy shit. You know what I mean? It always happened like once I was in custody. That's when shit always happened. You know what I mean? So yeah, the probation officer had this big case on me. All the juvenile hall staff put this big fucking, you know what I mean, really made me look like I was, you know what I mean, like I was fucking, I was just, you know, this hardcore, you know what I mean,
killer.
Calling the shot, super predator. You know what I mean? This is like This is like late 90s, early 2000s. You know what I mean? The language of like super predators and like all this shit is being used to describe kids. You know what I mean? Gang members, all this stuff. You know,
the other Clinton was putting out some major fucking laws on guys like you. Super predator.
Yeah, exactly. You know, all these tough on crime laws and shit. You know, so they ended up sending me to this like low level youth authority type thing. It wasn't like a real YA, you know. It was like you go there and there was like you could be there for 4 months or you could be there for 2 years, and it was on a point system. You know what I mean? So you got like 30 points a day, and you had to get like so many thousands of points to graduate. You know what I mean? And you lose points for everything. You know what I mean? If you get in a fight, that's like 1,000 points. If you cuss, that's like 15 points. You know what I mean? If you don't fucking do your homework, that's 30 points. You know what I mean? It's like no talking in the chow hall. You know what I mean? It was like all like kind of like boot camp type shit. You know? You had to wear like a uniform and like all this shit and fold your bed with hospital corners and like all this type of shit. You know what I mean?
What kind of weird fucker thought that up?
Military.
Hey, you know what's funny though? Hey, you know what's funny about that place? It's been there for a long time. It's been there since like the 70s. Foul Springs Youth Authority is what it was called. And it was funny because my uncle, my dad's brother, was actually in that same youth authority when he was a kid, and he burnt the whole place down. They used to let him have like little dirt bikes, I guess, back in the day. You know what I mean? They could like ride around. Yeah, they had like these little like. Well, like those little like those little like Honda 80, like the little 80s, fucking, you know what I mean? And they used to like let the kids who were working, because they had like, you know, they had agriculture there, you know what I mean? So like, you were, I mean, it was like slave, like you had to take care of the grounds. You're on the farm, basically, you know what I mean? And they had like a garden where they like harvested their own food and all this stuff. And so like, if a kid was like, you know what I mean, been there for a long time and had seniority, you know what I mean? They didn't have this when I was there, but my uncle was telling me this story, you know? And so, yeah, he had like one of these little dirt bikes, and they sent him on an errand, you know, hey, go, you know what I mean, run this message over there before they had walkie-talkies. Well, I don't know, you know what I mean?
Right.
So he was riding this dirt bike, and he stopped to like smoke or something like that, you know what I mean? And fucking caught this place on fire, and like huge fucking forest fire. He ended up fucking getting sent to fucking YA from there too, you know?
Damn. And, so did you get enough points to graduate from this place?
I ended up failing that place, man. I almost got kicked out of there. I was only there for 2 months and almost got kicked out of there. They almost sent me back to my county. So that was the thing. Like, if you got too many write-ups, or after the 2 years was up, if you still didn't have enough points, or you hadn't demonstrated that you were, you know what I mean, that you were taking the program seriously, they sent you back to your county and you got resentenced. And usually what happened then is they would send you to like the real Preston was the YA.
Preston was one up there.
That was the one that they would send us to, you know? And so like that was like, so this place was kind of like the in-between stage between like, you know what I mean? It was like the next stop was like Preston for most of us that were there, you know?
Was there any weird fuckers? I don't mean like the people in it, but like in these weird YAs with the points and everything, was there ever like some like old chick or some old dude that you could tell was kind of enjoying or weird about the fact that they was making you guys do all this shit?
Probably, man. Yeah, some of it was kind of. If they did, I didn't really pick up on it at the time. You know what I mean? Maybe in hindsight, in juvenile hall for sure. You know what I mean? Like,
what do you mean? Like what?
Well, for one, I remember one of the guards in juvenile hall ended up getting fired and ended up being in the newspaper in this whole scandalous thing because he was like, you know, going up to like the girls, because it was like there was a girl wing and there was a boys wing, and he was going in the girl's cell and like telling them to fucking strip, like searching their cells and shit.
Damn.
You know what I mean? Yeah,
fake ass fucking strip searches.
Yeah, you know,
man,
shit like that.
Yeah, it's that shit like that fucks me up because I'm like, I don't think you should have like young boys and young girls around a bunch of older adults, whether they're guy or girl, that really want to be in that kind of job. It's a little weird. Yeah. So then what happened in that middle way? Then where'd you go?
Oh, so anyway, I got sent there. I was in Foul Springs, and the same thing. I mean, I kind of clicked up with the Chicano kids there, and it was funny, man. We ended up getting this big fight. This big group fight over the fucking movie American Me, right?
What happened?
They showed this fucking film. You know what I mean? Because
they showed that.
They showed that to us.
That doesn't sound like a good idea.
That's not good at all.
And you know, I think that in their mind they were gonna. It was like a scared straight type movie or something. You know what I mean? That's what they thought. So they would show movies like every Friday night. They would show a movie, and we'd all get in like this little like day room area, and we watch movie. You know what I mean? So they showed us fucking American Me, and there's that
everybody up,
and there's that one scene in the movie where it makes a brief reference to this other prison gang, right? You know what I mean? And one of the dudes disrespected, you know what I mean? And said like, oh yeah, that's right. You know what I mean? Like that's the scene where they killed the dude in the movie theater. And dude was like, yeah, that's how we do it. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And like Big Los or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so the dudes I was kicking it with, they were like, you know, like, hey, we're going to do something about this. You know what I mean? And we didn't do something about that that night, but the next week when they showed the movie, like we're going to get them. You know what I mean? And so we blocked off, so you know everybody like wants to sit with their homeboys and shit, so we like piled up all these tables in between us and the control room, and we all kind of sat in the back, and we knew that they were all going to sit together, you know what I mean? And it got put on me like, hey, you know what I mean, you need to take flight on fucking that dude right there, you know what I mean? And so I did, and you know what I mean, as they turned the lights off and the movie came on, I turned around and I was like, hey, you know, what's up? And he was like, what the fuck, you know? And anyway, I started bombing on him, you know what I mean? We started fighting, and then my homeboy came running behind me and started bombing this other dude, and the other dude came running behind me and so it was just like they turned into this big brawl, and we were just brawling in this little fucking day room, you know what I mean? Just fighting with fists or whatever, you know? And they didn't even have any like cells to put us in, you know what I mean? They just came in, pepper sprayed us a little bit, you know what I mean? Came jumping, running over the tables, tagged us all down, you know what I mean? Zip tied, you know, separated us all for a minute, started interviewing, what was this all about, you know what I mean? But they eventually just let us go back. I mean, it was like a dorm setting, you know what I mean? So it was like bunk beds. By the end of the night, you know what I mean? Like fucking whatever, they just put us back on our bunk beds, whatever. But we all got write-ups, you know? And they were always going to kick me out for that, you know what I mean? Because they saw like, oh yeah, you know, you threw the first punch. We saw you, you know, people said they saw you attack him unprovoked, you know what I mean? All this shit,
the camera
you know?
picked you up, you were glowing in the dark.
Yeah, and I didn't, you know, I just kept on, I don't know what you're talking about, you know what I mean? It was just mutual combat, you know what I mean? It was just whatever, you know what I mean? And so I ended up I was only been there for like, you know, less than 2 months. I'd been there like 40 days or something, you know, at the time this happened. So they ended up giving me another chance, you know what I mean? And I was there for like about another year. I was there for like another year, you know what I mean? Just losing points every day, just fucking up, you know what I mean? Just not doing my schoolwork. The schoolwork there was a joke too, you know what I mean? It was like they give you these little packets, right? These little like you get a packet for each like discipline, like math, English, history, and each packet was worth like 4 units, and it was just up to you to do it. So they just handed these out, and you're just supposed to sit there and go through them and do them, and then turn them in at the end of the week to show how much progress you made. And like most of us wouldn't even do that shit. We just get these packets and draw on them, you know what I mean? Tag them up, whatever, you know what I mean? Fucking and turn it back. You know, we didn't even do shit. So I was always, you know, I was losing a bunch of points, and so I was there for like another year, I think, maybe a little over a year. And I was almost getting ready to graduate. I almost had enough points. I was almost getting ready to graduate, and I got another fight with this dude. And he was new. He had just gotten there. You know what I mean? He had just gotten there, and he hadn't been there that long. And I was fucking around with my homeboy in the chow hall, and like he threw a milk carton at me, and I batted it away real quick, and it landed in this other dude's plate and splashed food all over his fucking shirt. You know what I mean?
Shit.
And he looked up at me, and I was like, I tried to apologize, man. I was like, hey, bro, my bad. You know what I mean? Like I didn't fucking mean to do that. You know what I mean? And he was like, he didn't want to take the apology. You know what I mean? I was like, I could tell. Like I was like, fuck, dude. You know?
Here we go.
And he came up to me in the line and got in my face. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you ain't gonna fucking throw no shit at me again. I started like disrespecting me. You know what I mean? Calling me names and shit.
Right.
And he went and got back in line, and I picked up a big old dirt cloth, and I hucked it at him, and I said, here, now I fucking threw something at you. You know what I mean? Like, fuck you.
Yeah. Give him a reason.
And so we had like this little latrine area. We had to brush our teeth, and I was in there brushing my teeth, and he snuck into the latrine area when I was in there, and I was rinsing my mouth out, and I turned around, and he just snapped my head back. I didn't even say nothing, just caught me. You know what I mean? And we just started boxing. We started fighting. Well, the floor was all wet, and he slipped. And he fell on his back, and I got on top of him, and I started, drilling him. And I noticed I still had my toothbrush in my hand, you know what I mean? And so I started trying to stab him in the face with my fucking toothbrush and shit, you know? And I wasn't really getting him that good. The toothbrush ended up breaking, you know what I mean? But he had like a little cut and like little pokes in his fucking face and shit, you know what I mean? And so the staff there, they took that and they gave me a DA referral with that. They charged me with to that county, which wasn't even my county. That was Colusa County. And they charged me with like assault with a deadly weapon or some shit like that. You know what I mean? Turned it into this big old fucking elaborate thing. Luckily, that county didn't pick it up. That county never picked it up, but they sent me back to my county to get resentenced with this horrible fucking report on me. You know what I mean? And I was looking like I was going to go to Preston, and the probation officer was in there. You know what I mean? Everybody, they had this big case on me. You know what I mean? I was becoming this fucking, you know what I mean?
Menace.
Lifelong, I was on my way to becoming a lifelong career criminal and all this shit, The only thing that saved me, well, one, my dad he ended up coming back around. He ended up like writing a big letter, came to the court like with this big letter saying that he had a job for me when I was going to do this, and like he ended up kind of going to bat for me. They let my dad like read like a statement in the courtroom.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
How did your dad make a turnaround?
Oh, well, he came back. So he wasn't gone all that time, you know what I mean? So he went to like Idaho or Montana, but he was only gone for he ended up going to jail up there. You know, he got like a DUI or something like that. And then he got out of jail from Montana or I don't know where, somewhere up there in one of those states, and ended up coming back. And so he was kind of in my life a little bit, in and out, you know what I mean? I would like see him on the weekends and shit like that, you know?
But what caused him to step up in a major way like that? I mean, cause and no disrespect, I'm not trying to say anything negative, but I'm just saying, like, on one level, it was wild. Like, did he get sober? Did he find God? Did he realize that, you know, maybe if he would have been a little bit more involved in your early life, that maybe you wouldn't be going down this path?
Yeah, I think so. You know what I mean? I think there was a time when he kind of clean. I think he was kind of like maybe getting clean, or you know what I mean, at that time, and you know, he was kind of getting his shit together and seeing the path that I was going on, and was like, what the fuck's happening to my kid? You know what I mean? And you know, so yeah, he came. You know what I mean? He came to one of my court dates, you know, and said this big old thing. The judge and the PO, they weren't trying to hear it. They're like, man, yeah, fuck you, fuck your dad. You know what I mean? Everything.
Damn.
And the judge wasn't with it. The judge was ready to fucking send me off to YA, and they ended up holding it over. They ended up getting like a stay or like a whatever, you know what I mean, and put me up for another court date. And I came back for another court date, and there was a different judge. There was like a different sit-in judge, and he was like a liberal kind of judge. You know what I mean? He was like he used to be like a federal, like some like big seeing like crazy cases, and he started asking all these questions like, well, what was his controlling case? You know what I mean? Like, what was the first thing that he was in custody for? Like, right. Oh, truancy and fucking dirty marijuana test. And it's like, oh, and he got in a fight, you know what I mean? Like, okay, you know what I mean? Like a fist fight, you know what I mean? It's whatever, you know? And the judge was like, you know, I don't really think we need to send this dude, you know what I mean, to fucking white. Because like YA, the Preston thing too, is like you go there, it's a behavior evaluation.
Right.
And if you fail the behavior evaluation after 120 days, then they sentence you to X amount of years or whatever, you know what I mean? And I was really in there for some petty shit, you know what I mean, to begin with. And so what that judge did, you know what I mean, is he like compromised with the DA and my probation officer, and they put me on like their own behavior evaluation. So they're like, we're going to send you back to juvenile. Like I already been in custody over a year. I've been in custody like, you know, 13 months or something at this time. And I'm like, we're going to put you on a 60-day behavior evaluation inside the juvenile hall. And if you're cool, you know what I mean? If you don't get any write-ups, like nothing, like no write-ups, fucking nothing, you know what I mean? You can go home, you know? But if you get anything, if you get in any fights, if you get in any fucking kind of disrespect a guard, anything like that, you know what I mean? We're going to send you to fucking YA or whatever.
Now, at this point in time in your mind, had you finally realized like, holy shit, this is the big break? Or did you were like, nah, fuck that?
No, I was kind of like, whatever, you know what I mean? Hey, well, yeah, so anyways, what happened, the only thing that saved me, right, when I was in that other place in Foul Springs, they had us wear like big ass boots and like, you mean walking all over the fucking place. I got like a really bad ingrown toenail, right? And it like got really fucking infected and shit. And I ended up having to go to the outside doctor to get surgery while I was on this behavior evaluation. And so they put me, so I went and they had to like cut my fucking toenail all out and shit, you know what I mean? Cause it was like bad. It was like all pus and like you could smell it and it was like all infected and shit, you know what I mean? It was really bad.
Dude, ingrown toenails ain't no joke, bro.
Yeah. So I had to go get surgery and shit, and they put me on medical watch, and I was on medical watch for like 3 or 4 weeks or something like that, you know? And then they let me out early. They're like, you know, you need to be able to like in a more sanitary place or whatever like this. And they ended up letting me out, you know, before my 60 days was even up. I think I was like 40 days on that behavior evaluation, and I was on medical watch the whole time because I had gotten surgery, so there was no way I could get in trouble, you know. So that kind of saved me a little bit. So I ended up kind of skirting YA, you know.
Hold on one second, Steve. Let me ask you a question, man. Whenever they trumped up a bunch of fucking institutionalized charges on you and stuff like that, was there ever a liberal judge that was like, "Hey, what's the controlling case?" Oh wait, and then peeled back all the layers and said, "Hey, you know what? This guy's got a chance."
Yeah.
Who? What was that instance?
That was when they were trying to give me and Polly, they were trying to get us to take like an avoidance of a third strike.
Yeah.
For dope, right?
Yeah.
Striking us out for dope. And they were trying to get us to take a deal for 18 and to take a deal, both of us take a deal for 10 to avoid the strike. And when it got bound over to Superior Court, that Judge Ito, OJ's judge.
Get the fuck out of here.
Gets the whole report. Yeah, I've told you. I've shared this story.
I know, but now it still blows my mind.
And he's looking at all the charges, and and while we're in custody fighting this case, the Romero Act had come into play, which was the guy who stole the piece of pizza.
Right.
So now they had Proposition 36 and the Romero Act going through. So Judge Ito's looking at our thing. He's like, he's looking at our charges. He looks all the way back to like our first charges. He's looking at our rap sheet.
Yeah.
He goes, man, you mean to tell me that these guys, you're trying to give them this much time? 2 drug addicts for dope. For dope. Now it was a bunch of dope. It was fucking a couple ounces of dope. But he's like, these drug addicts, wash them away. He goes, these guys will be back here in 24 months on appeals. And it's going to do nothing but waste our money. And we're going to try and give these guys, decades because they're drug addicts. And he had called like
the council,
everybody up, man,
right, to have a little sidebar.
And so, and then we're looking at our attorney, and our attorney's like, he called counsel, and basically he's like, I'm going to give these guys the mandate. I'm going to give them what they're mandated, the mandate, what the law requires, what the and he's like, sentence us to midterm possessions. And we didn't get the first, we got the midterm, the mid sentence. Yeah. And then that gets doubled up and 80% because you have 2 strikes. So you're doing double whatever it is, and you don't get half time. So we ended up walking out of there, 6 years sentences, opposed to, they were trying to get us to both take 10 at the bottom.
In Oregon, I think they just recently put in the laws that you can't go to jail for drug use anymore.
They did it somewhere else too.
Like you go to rehab.
I think Oregon too.
That's what I just said, Oregon.
Yeah, it's like decriminalized. They got that thing in Santa Cruz too. So like, I was living in Santa Cruz for a minute, and it's like the same thing. It's like it's like an extension of the county jail where they got like a lot of people from like recovery programs that are working in there, and someone will get picked up for under the influence or have some paraphernalia, get picked up with a rig or something like that on them or something petty like that. And they'll have to like come sign a little paper saying, hey, are you going to be cool? You know what I mean? Like you're just going to go to sleep. And instead of processing them through the county jail, they'll put them in this little like house and they can't leave there for the night. You know what I mean? They sleep there, feed them, let them take a shower, and they'll just go to bed and they'll let them out the next morning. You know what I mean? And they'll give them like a citation or whatever.
That's what they remember. Otis the drunk in Andy Griffith. That's how they used to do it. You were drunk. Then Otis would come in and put himself in the jail and just fucking go to bed. Right. And then the next day when he sobered up, got up, he was out.
Yeah. It's crazy. That's crazy, bro.
So, all right. So you skirt YA and then your life is just happy and free after that, right? Oh,
it's all bad. It got No, it ended up getting a lot worse actually, man. So I ended up, I got out that time and I went, I was trying to find my home. I went back out to the res to try to see where my homeboy was at. And like, it was a pretty tragic story, actually. I heard that his older brother had gotten murdered. Damn. You know what I mean? And the other dude had gotten a fucking case. He was in county. He was an adult at this time, you know what I mean? And fighting some crazy charge, you know what I mean? They were trying to give him like, I think he ended up getting like 16 years or something like that, you know what I mean? For like some robbery and kidnapping and some crazy shit, you know what I mean? And that was kind of like, I didn't know where else to go after that. You know what I mean? I was like, fuck, these were like my boys, you know what I mean? Like, I couldn't didn't really feel comfortable going back to the old neighborhood by myself. These were kind of every time I went there, I was always like with them or like somebody that I knew, you know what I mean?
Right.
And, I kind of started hanging out there in that county, you know what I mean? I started doing a lot of drugs, man. I got really bad in the meth. I started doing a lot of meth, you know what I mean? And, just hanging out with them. And, that was kind of like a transition point too, you know what I mean? Where like, I wasn't, I was still kind of dressing like, you know what I mean? Like I was from the city, you mean, still dressing like a little Mexican, you know what I mean? And a little white Mexican kid. And that shit wasn't like really cool in like the town I was living in. It was a bunch of old fucking, you know what I mean?
Right.
Redneck fucking, you know what I mean? Like wannabe biker type kind of deal, you know what I mean?
Right.
And, and that's...
They didn't appreciate that.
No, yeah.
Did they try to set you straight where they're like, hey, listen, I think you might be confused there, young man.
I got that. Well, the other thing was, is my mom actually is half Mexican, you know what I mean? And, so I have family from Texas, from Midland, Texas, and I think my great grandpa was actually from Chihuahua, and my other grandma, she was Native American. So I got all my cousins, all my mom's family, my mom's side, they're all Mexican. I got family down here in LA, in Valinda and Puente area,
sure,
and San Bernardino, and and they're all Mexican American, Chicano, and my grandma, I used to have to go to like Spanish speaking mass with her when I visited like on Christmas and shit like that. You know what I mean? So like that was in me. You know what I mean? And I would always justify that. Like, well, no, fuck that. Actually, I am. You know what I mean?
Right.
And and everybody be like, oh yeah, right, whatever. You know what I mean? Shut up. But anyways, but I did kind of start transitioning away, and just involved in the drug scene. You know what I mean? And just hanging out, and and doing little stupid shit, breaking into cars, stealing cars, you know what I mean? And just driving around a stolen car till it ran out of gas, go do some dirt in it, you know what I mean? Steal some shit, leave it on the side of the road, you know what I mean? Doing shit like that, you know?
I know this isn't a popular question, and you may or may not want to answer it, but what's a great thing about doing meth? I mean, we all know it leads to fucking taking apart shit and having no clothes, but like, what's a great thing about it?
Honestly, nothing, man. I never liked it. I did a lot because a lot of the people who I was hanging out with and around, like they were doing it, but I never really enjoyed like the feeling from it, to be honest, man.
Hold on.
I started doing heroin when I was like 19, and I was like, all right, this is what I should have been doing the whole time. The meth was not happening, man.
So what is it like when everyone's doing the meth then, right?
Yeah.
The meth. And then you like are like, oh man, this again? And then, but you still did it because it's like that's what's going on. What mental discussions do you have with yourself before the fucking thing your hit comes to you?
Man, I don't even know if I was capable of having a mental discussion with myself. You know what I mean? I was just so gone. I was really worthless on that shit, man. I couldn't pull off a hustle. I couldn't pull off a lick. Like I would be at places, you know what I mean, where people I was around were planning and going to do something and drawing, like we're going to go in here and do all this and get all this, you know what I mean? And I'd be in the corner like drawing some fucking skull, and you know what I mean, just like completely out of the loop, you know what I mean? With a big ass pimple on my head and just like bro, like you're off the team, you know what I mean? Like you're done. And but I couldn't pull off shit, man.
What kind of nicknames did they give you?
I went by Casper for a long time.
Did you?
Yeah.
What about when you were drawing skulls and they're like, yeah, you ain't a part of this, bro. You're out to lunch right now. Did they give you crazy names?
No, not that they might have, but they didn't tell me. Yeah. No, anyways, yeah. So I ended up back in the county jail. Shortly after that, on an auto theft case. I got pulled over in a stolen car, and and I ate the case for it. I'd been doing a bunch of shit, you know what I mean? And they were, the cops were looking for me. I was like, being investigated for all types of property crimes that were going on in the area and whatnot. And I had gotten in a big old, well, maybe I shouldn't even say what I did because maybe they could still charge me with it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I don't know.
Careful.
You know what I mean?
Careful.
But you heard a guy that got involved in what? You heard some rumors about somebody else that did something that was something similar, which was kind of what? Can you describe what it was? That somebody else did?
Yeah, no, well, I heard, you know what I mean, that there was this big, dramatic pursuit, you know what I mean, on the freeway.
Oh, yeah, we've had some people come in and tell us some stories about
that. And they didn't really know, they kind of knew who it was, but they didn't really know they couldn't really prove or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah,
right, okay.
So I ended up, then I ended up getting pulled over a couple of days out, a couple of days later, and I was just caught red-handed, you know what I mean, with the screwdriver hanging out the ignition and everything. And my homeboy was in the car, and I kind of ate the case right there on the spot, you know what I mean? I just said that, they didn't know anything, it's all me, you know what I mean? I don't even know these guys. I just picked them up hitchhiking, and I don't know, they didn't have nothing to do with anything, and you know what I mean?
Yep.
And whatever, you know what I mean? And so I was in county jail for that, fighting that case, and well, not really fighting. I pretty much took the first deal they fucking offered me, but
right.
But yeah, when I was in county that time, I was kind of I knew I was going to prison. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do and who I was going to click up with when I went to prison. You know what I mean? Because my whole juvenile career, I had been rocking with, you know what I mean?
Right.
With these Chicanos and shit, you know what I mean?
They're going to ask you to make a choice at some point.
Right, and but at the other hand, I wasn't really from a neighborhood, you know what I mean? I never really been jumped in before. I didn't know if I was going to be accepted, you know what I mean? And so all these things were going, and the county jail that I was in was it was nothing but whites. You know what I mean? It was white, maybe a couple of Native Americans here and there. You know what I mean? But it was mostly a bunch of white boys in there.
Yeah.
And there was this one older. He was actually a Native American dude that I knew that had been to the pen a lot. That I actually kind of knew him from the res scene out there. And I trusted him. You know what I mean? I went up to him hey, what do I do when I get to the pen? Who do I kick it with? You know what I mean? In a juvenile hall, I was doing this. And he kind of broke it down to me hey, bro, you know what I mean? All that juvenile hall shit, doesn't matter to me. What matters is what you do when you get there. But whatever you choose when you get there, that's what you got to rock with, you know what I mean? And I was thinking, you know what I mean? And I didn't want to ask him, you know what I mean? I didn't want to ask him too many more questions than that. But I was thinking fuck, man, if I try to kick it with the people who I've been kicking with this whole time, are they going to, you know what I mean? Are they
going to let you in?
Right, you know what I mean? And I didn't have any tattoos that really identified me as anything, you know what I mean? So I kind of made the decision in county jail, all right, I'm just going to rock with the white boys, you know what I mean, when I get there. And,
right.
I did that. And so ironically, the thing I went to the hole for the riot was actually the group that I had been kicking it with my whole juvenile hall career ended up rushing us out in the yard. And I didn't even know what was going to happen, you know what I mean? Like, I just got, next thing I knew, this dude would just run at me with his arm cocked back, and I was like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And I just kind of like barely squared up with this dude. But anyways, I got written up for that.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
All right. Hold on. So you're saying, like, all right, went to the pen, talked to the Indian. Indian's like, well, I don't really know what to tell you. All that shit in YA doesn't matter, which it turns out maybe wasn't 100% correct.
Yeah, in hindsight, I could have, you know what I mean? I didn't realize at the time, but I probably could have. And, but on one hand, though, for some reasons, I'm kind of glad that I didn't, you know what I mean? Some reasons, if I could go back, you know what I mean? I'm not sure what I would have done, but like, my cousins down here are in LA. It wouldn't have been cool, you know what I mean? It would have made for some awkward fucking Thanksgivings and Christmas gatherings and shit, you know what I mean?
Right.
So for that reason, I'm kind of glad that I chose to go the way I did. But
the reason why I'm laying it out is I'm not trying to say what you should have done.
Right. Oh,
okay?
right.
I'm just trying to lay out the scenario that's in front of you.
Right.
Like, it's not an easy scenario.
Right.
Which is okay. So then, and you're worried about it enough that you're going to ask somebody. Right. They're telling you, like, okay, forget about YA, but whatever you choose, you got to stick with that.
Right.
So then you sat back and you did the best calculation you could.
Right.
You're like, no one's going to believe that my mother's half Mexican and I went to Spanish Mass.
Yeah.
I got no fucking tattoos. Oh. So what am I going to do? So I'm going to click up with the white dudes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the guys that you used to be down with in YA.
That group of gentlemen rush the white guys.
Yeah.
God.
And he's in the white guys.
Man, if you couldn't set like a better...
He only wanted to be with those dudes for about 5 minutes.
Right.
For the first 5 minutes, he's like, fuck, I fucked up.
Dude, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, dude, in a movie, right? Like, if you're making a movie about this dude's life, right? Fox and the Hound.
You're like, that's the end of it. He fucked up. He chose wrong.
That's right. He finally, he's been told all his life, you better click up with the white dudes, and he was doing meth with some small...
wrestling with himself.
Right. His identity the whole time. He's confused. He's like, I ain't confused. He's just, I don't understand what you guys are doing around here. Finally, he gets in there, and then he looks across the yard, and there's like all his old homeboys. That's fucked up. That's tough. But like you said, you did what you had to do, and whatever.
Yeah. So that's what I went to the hole for. You mean that's what I got sent to ASIC for, and I'd actually been involved in another incident prior to that, and I had actually ended up getting away with that one. You know what I mean? But then while I was in the hole for the riot, I got a confidential informant thing slid under my door. The dude. So man, that's something that I think about a lot. That little incident. So pretty much everybody that was involved in this incident, and there was it was far-reaching. The people that were impacted by this, or like part of this in some way or another. All of them ended up locking it up and PCing up and telling on me and all this shit. You know what I mean? Not at that time. So anyways, so so on the one hand, that's what I was going to say, you know what I mean? This is like, where my story, I feel like is maybe a little different to some people, you know what I mean? Cause like I was doing 16 months for auto theft, you know what I mean? That was my case, you know what I'm saying? Most people who do that, I was expecting to be put on a level 1 ranch, you know what I mean? Fire camp. I heard all about the big cinnamon buns and biscuits and gravy on Sunday and shit, you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm
telling him Chino stories.
That's what I was signing up for right there, you know what I'm saying? And
dude, they're gonna serve half chickens, bro, big old fucking roscas.
Oh yeah, all that.
Yeah, you eat good over there.
Yeah. You
gate. There's only a gate.
Yeah, working out. You know what I mean? Well, you getting all swollen shit. You know what I mean? Tattoo, whatever.
They sell it to you good.
Oh yeah. No, it was good. Yeah. Just take the deal. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
couldn't wait to get up to prison.
Anyways, yeah. So man, that fucking, it was very apparent very early on that was not going to be. That's not how I was going to do my time. Yeah. So anyways, this thing happened. You know what I mean? And I was thinking about this is like a story that I kind of wanted to tell here too. This dude, one of my friends who I'd known for a long time, I knew him since like high school, you know what I'm saying? Like he was something that I partied with and got high with and all this shit, you know what I mean? And he had, he'd gone to prison when he was young, at a young age, like 20-something for robbing a house, residential burglary, which is a strike, you know what I mean? He gave him a strike offense. And so he ended up getting caught up for all, like this whole string of fucking burglaries, you know what I mean? And they were going to strike him out. He was like 22, 23 years old at the time, you know what I mean? And they were threatening him with life sentences, you know what I mean? All this stuff. He was looking at getting struck out for all these burglaries and shit, you know what I mean? And so he told, you know what I mean? He like took him out of the county jail, took him down to the sheriff's department, made videos, you know what I mean? And he told him where everything was at, you know what I mean? And all this shit, you know what I mean? And just spilled the beans on this whole case, you know what I'm saying? And He ended up getting rolled up out of one of the pods, you know what I mean? So he was in jail when I was in there. He was in a different pod. They ended up, you know what I mean, that paperwork ended up surfacing on him. They put hands on him, you know what I mean? He got, you know, they got him out of there, but he didn't want to lock it up, you know what I mean? He thought that he was going to do like a cleanup or something like this and get himself out of it, you know what I mean? He didn't want to like go PC up or whatever, you know? And so I'm in the pod. So there's this other older white dude, you know, in the pod with us, and he's an older cat, you know what I mean? He'd already done, you know, multiple turns, you know what I mean? Done level 4 times, kind of an OG, you know what I mean? Like one of my fucking like big homies, kind of, you know, and you know, he was also, you know, one of these types of cats who had managed to kind of slip under the radar or the whole validation things that was going on in like the 90s and all this shit. And he was kind of like pulled me and this other dude to the side and was like, hey, you know, if we go with this dude tomorrow, you know, if he's on the bus with us, you know what I mean? Like we're gonna do this, you know, and are you guys down, you know? And in my head, I was thinking like, you know what I mean? Like, what are the chances of like all of us ending up on the fucking same bus, you know, like everything working out like that good? So I was like, yeah, you know, fucking whatever, you know what I mean?
Right,
kind of banking on the fact that like this is not gonna happen.
It's not gonna happen, right?
They're not gonna send us all on the same fucking chain together, and it did, you know. And so the other dude that I did it with too.
Wait.
Yeah.
All right. So, you know, you go there and they got the guy. Someone's like, "Hey, we got some work to do." And you're like, "What are the fucking odds?"
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it couldn't be. I already got fucking dudes that I used to hang out with were on the other side of the aisle, so I've already got my bad luck stroke. There's no way, right? So yeah, man, that's right. Let's do it.
Yeah. And,
when did you, as you're walking to this bus or whatever it is, at what point do you start to see like did you see one guy come and you're like, oh shit, that's weird, one guy, then the next guy, like when did you start to see the stars lining up?
All right, so well, right when I got put into holding, so they take you out of the pod, they bring you out like real early in the morning when you're on a transfer, like, you know, 4 o'clock. It's like still dark outside, you know, and they pull you in there. They take you in this little cell. You got to walk through the metal detector, and then they put you like in a paper jumpsuit, and they put you in one of the holding cells. As I was coming out of the metal detector and walking past the holding cells, I seen dude that we're supposed, and I was just like, okay, like we're going with him. And then my other homeboy, well, we were in the same pod, and they took us both out, but they didn't take my older homeboy out, the one that was like kind of like overseeing this whole thing, you know what I mean? They didn't take him out. It was just me and the other dude, and I'm thinking like, okay, well, you know what I mean? Like, you know, what, are we still gonna do it? You know what I mean? Like, right. You know, I don't know, you know. And so we ended all getting put on the same bus. Like they put him right, and he's like, "Oh, Clint, like what's up?" You know what I mean? Like, remember fucking? Oh, did you?
Of course he is.
Oh,
dog.
did you? Hey, have you?
My dog, he's breathing easier.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, have you? Hey, did you fucking
real talkative now?
Yeah. Hey, you're a sight for sore eyes.
Yeah.
Clint.
Hey, did fucking Amanda ever write you? And you know what I mean? Talking about all this shit, you know?
Time when we
and I was just like, "Oh fuck, man," you know what I mean? Like. And I felt kind of bad about it too. You mean, I'm like, fuck, man, I knew this dude for a long time. And like, you know, anyways, we all, you know, end up going in there. And so they end up putting us all in the same holding tank in R&R, right? And they put us in the same holding tank, me, dude that I'm supposed to, you know what I mean? And dude that whatever, right?
And dude that you're supposed to, are you guys every once in a while looking at each other like, do you guys make eye contact?
Yeah, I'm like waiting for him because well, he had already done a turn. This is my first. You know, I figured if anything, I could just play it up like, well, you know, I didn't know. You know what I mean? Whatever. You know,
communicate clearly.
Yeah, exactly. You know, this is like my first turn. This is my first day in fucking prison. You know what I'm saying? And I'm looking at dude, and like, I'm kind of waiting for him to like make the first move or like tell me that we're gonna do it. Well, then the dude the older cat. He ended up coming on just the bus behind us, and they ended up taking him out of the pod like a few minutes later. So he comes walking in, and they tell him to go in one of the different holding cells, but he doesn't listen to him. Well, like the CO turns it back, and he just walked into ours. You know what I mean? And he's looking at me and was like, "All right," you know what I mean? Like, and he had like a little thing with him that he had made, and you know what I mean, the counter the night before. You know what I mean? And passed it to, and you know what I mean. I looked at my homeboy, the dude, and I was like, "Hey, man. You ready for this?" You know? And he was like, "What?" And he was eating a sandwich, and I started bombing on him, you know what I mean? And he got up and started chunking him with me, you know what I mean? And, you know, he started fighting back, and then my other dude, you know, pushed him into the corner and, you know, started getting him and shit, you know what I mean? And I was looking at that like, well, you know, I didn't really think about it, man. He was like, you know, I felt like my body was moving and my brain was without my brain telling it to you know what I mean? And
right. Out of body, like kind of
autopilot.
Right,
man. And so, you know, I stepped back, I kicked this dude in the head, like kicked his head into the wall as hard as I could. And he hit the ground, you know, and he started kind of going into like this weird convulsion thing and, you know, blood bubbles coming out his nose and breathing all wheezing, all fucked up, you know what I mean? And I was just like, I thought that we fucking, you know what I mean? I thought that it was like a bad one, you know what I mean? And I was like tripped. I was like, oh fuck, you know what I mean? But he was, and then my older homeboy was like, all right, you guys got him, you know what I mean? You can stop, you know what I mean? And We, flushed the thing, whatever, you know what I mean? And we started washing our hands off, washing the blood off our shoes, started trying to clean ourselves up or whatever, And then there was other dude in one of the holding tanks. He was like, he had parole from ASSEG and was going back to the hole. He paroled from the hole, was going back to the hole. And he was watching this from the sidelines. And he told the old homeboys, like, hey, you can't tell him to stop, man. Like, you guys need to keep going. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just fucking tell him to stop. Like, if he's still moving and shit, you know what I mean? And I was like hearing that, and I was like, fuck, man. Well, as they were having,
old dude, shut the fuck up.
Yeah. And as he was having that conversation, the CO came to pull us out, to put us like in the little holding yard, and seeing him on the ground. And shit smeared. And he was like, everybody up against the wall, you know what I mean? Everybody fucking take their shirts off, you know what I mean? Blah, blah, blah. He hit this little, said something in his thing. Alarm went off. You know what I mean? They put us all in the cages, you know what I mean? Started interviewing everybody. Well, dude held his mud, you know what I mean? The dude that we got, like, he didn't, when they got him out of there and, walked him out of there or whatever, he told him that he had a seizure, that he didn't remember anything, that he didn't know what would happen. Mm-hmm. Nobody said nothing. Nobody saw nothing, you know what I mean? He told, they asked him how he got all these marks on him. He said that he got in a fight in the county the night before and that he never reported it and shit, you know what I mean?
Right.
And at this time, and this was in DVI, this was in Tracy, and this type of shit was happening every fucking day in there. So the COs were just like, fuck it, whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
And they ended up taking him to go get some medical attention or whatever, you know what I mean? And they kicked us out in like the little holding yard, and they just let us go back out to the line, And so this is so here, I'm in this, and they sent us to the wing. They sent us to the fuck up wing too. You know what I mean? I was probably going to end up like in a dorm or something like that on kitchen duty. They put me in one of the wings that was like kind of popping off, where there was like a lot of politicking going on, And so the dude that I did it with, he ended up like locking it up and like PCing up like 2 or 3 days later. And I don't know why, to this day, I don't know why, but I walked by his cell one day and I looked in his cell and I asked the cell, like, hey, where's dude, And he was like, oh, he's okay. He's okay. You know what I mean? And I was like,
he's okay.
I was like, he's okay. Yeah.
I wasn't asking that.
I was like,
he's okay.
I didn't know anything was wrong.
He's okay.
Don't worry about him. He's cool.
I'm not okay, motherfucker.
Yeah, man. And so I didn't even know, at that point, I didn't even know what happened. You know what I mean? So I had to like, you had to like get a TB shot and like go to medical and like get cleared to go out to yard. And so the first time I get cleared to go out to yard, I'm in there like 13 days, you know what I mean? And a couple people had seen that. So like a couple of dudes like, that were in my wing with me, like, oh yeah, that dude, you know what I mean? We saw it, like you got down or whatever. It was cool, you know what I mean? So I already like knew people were coming up, introducing themselves to me, and it was like a cool vibe, you know what I mean?
It's interesting. It's interesting how, that situation happens, or I think about some things that happen in like LA County Jail, or just like, maybe I didn't even mean for them to happen the way they happened, but somehow they happen, and then I end up going upstate and like, motherfuckers remember little things, dog.
Right.
And it's weird how your reputation can be built, and you don't even know it's getting built while it's going down, and you don't ever know who's ever looking and paying attention. There's always something. And just like the way that dude saw what happened to him,
right?
And they're like coming up, and he's got like a decent rep in there, because it's the same way as if you fucked up.
Right, it goes
Somebody
the other way.
saw you. Somebody knows that dude. Fucking man. Yeah, I fucking it always. So both ways, people are always watching your actions, dude.
So in those scenarios, then you gotta comport yourself how you want to be seen, even if you think you're alone. You gotta fucking do everything 100%. Otherwise,
yeah. There's always eyes watching. Somebody's always watching. Go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, so I come out to yard the first time I'm out in the yard for like 20 minutes, and then we get rushed. You know what I mean? And I get caught up in this melee. Get taken to the hole for that. Get written up for that. And while I'm in the hole, then I start understanding like what's happening. You know what I mean? So I see. So the dude that we got, he obviously, he locked it up or whatever. You know what I mean? And he told. I don't know. To this day, I don't really know like who told on me. I'll say that. So they put me in L wing in Tracy, which is one of the ADSEG wings there, right? And so one half of L wing overlooks the GP, the active group yard, the ADSEG group yard, and the other half overlooks the DO yard. You know what I mean? The dropout yard. You know what I mean? What's the dropout yard? It's the ADSEG yard for people who are debriefing or people who
walking away.
Yeah. And so they put me on this side, and I seen dude that I did it with come out to yard right there, and I was like, oh, and I wanted to talk to him. My cellie was like, nah, don't be fucking.
Yeah, you can't be hollering.
Talking, you don't be hollering at him and shit. You know what I mean? But I was like, kind of. So I was just like, I was.
Well, yeah, you wanted to almost be like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
What's up?
yeah. And I didn't know. So I know that he had done another term, and you know what I mean. Maybe something happened on that term. I don't know what it was. You know what I mean? anyways, I think he actually, I don't know what he said, but in a way, I think whatever he did say, it might have helped me a little bit. You know what I mean? So anyway, I get a confidential informant thing under my door, while I'm in ASSEC waiting to go to committee for the riot thing for a battery on an inmate with a weapon, and I go talk to the sergeant. So I ended up getting a DA referral for that. They gave me a DA referral for the riot, and you know what I mean. So I got these 2 DA referrals that I'm waiting on. Well, they ended up getting dismissed. So the battery ended up getting dropped down to just a petty battery on an inmate with a weapon. You know what I mean? And I kind of like have a feeling that maybe when the dude when he checked in, maybe he kind of ate that case, you know what I mean? For me, and at the same time, you know what I mean? The thing that we did it with was that it was pitiful. It was a pitiful little fucking thing that we used, you know what I mean? It was like,
It wasn't anything
no
serious.
like no, you know what I mean? And like that type of shit was so that was another thing when I was in Tracy at that time in Tracy, shit like that was happening like all the time, you know what I mean?
All day long.
Dude, and just slicing up with razor blades and people like, dudes could get stabbed like 7 times with these little things and get up and walk away.
Right.
You know what I mean? And just get up and walking off the yard, you know what I mean? And going, I'm okay. It's cool. And you know what I mean? So it was kind of like one of these incidents, and so
like
but
if I stabbed you with a little pencil like that, like this big,
but it looks good on paperwork though, you know what I mean?
On paper, the hole's the hole.
Right.
If I hit you with this little thing like a couple times in fucking side of your back of your neck, like you could probably just go home, put the bandages on it, and you're gonna be okay. But on the report, it's got a dude's fucking outline.
They got the whole
mark, and you're like, this dude got a pegada. That's a legitimate fucking stabbing right there. Give me a shot, right?
Yeah. And so luckily, this case didn't. So neither one of those cases, the DA referral. So, and this was San Joaquin County, you know what I mean? So they were just getting flooded with these fucking DA referrals.
Right. Sure. That's the Central Valley, bro.
They weren't picking any of this shit
to
up,
weed out the small ones.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And dudes were getting away with all kinds of shit in there. Anyways,
what year is this?
This is 2005. Yeah, in the summer of 2005.
Because I was in.
O'Reilly.
This is Derek's O'Reilly Auto Parts story.
After the 3rd time jump-starting my car, I finally realized my battery was dying. So I stopped by O'Reilly to have it checked. They tested it right there in the parking lot. It was bad, real bad. But they helped me find the right battery for my car and even installed it for free. Now my car starts like new.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
What you doing?
Designing my new 2021 Nissan Kicks online in the Kicks Color Studio. I give each a special name. This one's electric blue, orange, red, white. I call it the gumball machine. You think it's me?
I feel like you're more of a red velvet guy.
Limitless possibilities. With over 100 million available color combinations and Bose Personal Plus system in the boldly new 2021 Nissan Kicks. Bose is a registered trademark of the Bose Corporation. Color combinations include interior and exterior colors. Customization is an available feature subject to availability at participating Nissan dealers. See dealer for details.
When I was busted in the early 90s, and, I caught a shoe term, and it was for some shit that cracked up on the yard, and they had inmates testifying, but they didn't have weapons, but they had inmates testifying, this whole thing. And, dude, I was in Kings County for this, because I guess that's what Corcoran's part of Kings County, and so there were stabbings going on, bro. They were picking up everything. Wow. They were striking fools out at the shoe. You're getting struck out in your shoe program. Wow. You catch your little strike, and I just remember, dude, they didn't pick up our case, but it was at a time where they were really picking up cases, and then I heard fast forward into the early 2000s, they were picking up a bunch of cases as well.
Wow. And so I was in AdSec there, and then so I ended up losing my good time. I was doing 16 with half. They took the other 8 months from me for the participation riot. Gave me a year shoe for that. Gave me a 4-month shoe for a battery on an inmate. And then while I was in there with that, you know what I mean? This is kind of like a funny story. This is like some of the good times, you know what I mean? And I had a neighbor. So Tracy's like a real old prison too, right? You know what I mean? And so you could pop your doors in there. You could put a toothpaste cap inside your lock, you know what I mean? You can sneak a toothpaste cap in there. And so when the cops shut it and they check it, it seems like it's locked, but if you push it hard enough, you could pop your door open and get out your door, you know what I mean?
Man.
And so this dude that was next to me was like doing that, you know what I mean? And so he was trying to break it. So he was there. I mean, they were both him. And so this is the dude I was the song, you know what I mean? The song that I'm telling you about. This is my neighbor, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Phil Collins.
Phil Collins, you know? And he's my neighbor, and so they were passing me and my cellie. They saw his kite and said, "Hey, we're gonna come out our cell tonight, and we're gonna fucking go in the control room and open up all these doors, and we're gonna rush these fools." You know what I mean? And I was like, "Fuck," you know what I mean? And sure enough, the dude, like, you know what I mean? At like around 10 o'clock at night or something, I hear plop. And he comes up to my window with a little fucking mask wrapped around his face and shit. And he's like, "What's up? You guys ready to do this?" You know what I mean? I was like, "Fuck it, let's do it." And he like went skirting off, you know what I mean, scuttling off and fucking with his little fucking blanket, fucking like Zorro mask tied around his fucking like a cloak. And so he couldn't get it, so he couldn't get into the fucking he couldn't get into the control room or whatever, but he did get into one of the cops' bags. One of the cops left their bags out. And he got like a can of raviolis. A pack of Marlboro Red cigarettes, and like a whole box of fucking shaving razors. You know what I mean? The kind of shaving razors. Yeah. And so he brought that back, and so he shot me and my cellie over like half of these fucking box of razors, and was like, "Hey, break these down." You know what I mean? So we were in there breaking down fucking shaving razors all night. You know what I mean? And wrapping them up. And, you know what I mean? Yeah, little stock. You know what I mean? And
some weapons.
Yeah. So we were doing that, and like, next day we come out to the yard, we had little cuts and shit all over our fucking fingers and shit. Having to do fucking push-ups in the fucking rainwater, and you know what I mean? All this, you know. And so we were over there, we had those, you know what I mean? And they were like, continuing to like pop the doors at night, you know what I mean? Trying to figure out a way to get the other doors open, you know what I mean? Like doing little shit, you know what I mean? We're going out to ADSEG, and little drama was happening. Well, like one day we had to come out to yard. They came out to yard early, and we had all this shit out, you know what I mean? And we were like doing something with it, and so we had to put it away real quick. We're like, "Oh shit, like they're like right at our door right now." And we just kind of played it off and like stuck it in the corner of our mattress real quick, and we had to go out to yard, and they came and hit our cell when we were out at yard, and they found all this stock, you know what I mean? And I don't know, it was like they found like 250 fucking little razor blades or something like that, all bundled up, you know what I mean? And they had all pictures out, you know what I mean? Yeah, and so then my cellie, he was kind of an old timer too, and like,
manufacturing on your ass.
Yeah. And this is not like really like an honorable case either, you know what I mean? Like this is kind of like seen as a kind of a fuck up, you know what I mean? And,
right, you ain't supposed to get caught.
And my cellmate, he's kind of an old timer, been around a long time, you know what I mean? And so it's. Anyway, he's just doing a violation. So I ended up eating that case. I ended up going into ICC and saying my cellie didn't know nothing about it. You know what I mean? It was all me. Got another DA referral. They try to put more time on me. So, okay. So then I ended up getting more charges brought up from my county. They found another vehicle with my prints in it. So I ended up actually having to go back out to court. They sent me to another two with half. And so I came back and caught this fucking weapons case, you know what I mean? And they took all my good time. So I lost all my good time for both my cases, you know what I mean? I lost the good time on my 16 months with half, and I lost the good time on my 2 years with half, you know what I mean? From the time that case started or whatever. Mm-hmm. And got my points jacked up to a level 4, you know what I mean? Caught a shoe term, you know what I mean? All that. I ended up doing, so they gave me a 10-month shoe for that from the time that happened.
See, when people are asking like how you end up on level 4 yards and you haven't killed nobody, you just get into trouble, bro. You keep on getting into trouble.
Yeah,
you'll
man.
end up there.
Yeah, man. And so like, and like that time, like prison was kind of like a big joke to me at that point, you know what I mean? It was like, okay, this is what happens when someone needs to get fucking dealt with, you know what I mean? They just get a little fucking poking or a little sliced up, and they just kind of walk themselves off. They go and like, this is like my prison experience at this point. There's a lot of drama and a lot of shit happening, but it's all pretty insignificant for the most part, you know what I mean? Like nobody's really getting hurt. I'm like, this shit's easy, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I ended up staying there in Tracy and ADSEG there, and they ended up moving us over to K-Wing. I was in K-Wing there for like 10 months. And then they sent me to Tehachapi, and I was in Tehachapi in the shoe there in Tehachapi for like another 5 months. And it was like going from Tracy to Tehachapi was like going from fucking the Motel 6 to the fucking Marriott, bro. It was like Tracy was just a filthy, disgusting fucking prison. You know what I mean? Rats getting into your commissary. The water was fucking brown. It was a filthy, filthy place to be. You know what I mean? And Tehachapi was just like you had a big ass window in your cell. You know what I mean? Like it was all clean and sanitary. The hot water got really hot and the cold water got really cold. And it was nice. You know what I mean?
There was like a fucking mint on your pillow.
People had fucking TVs. Yeah, TVs, headphones, all this shit. You know what I mean? And it was like. It was cool, and there was a group yard in there, and there was only like 3 or 4 like white dudes on the group yard, and it was just kind of chill. We came out, did push-ups, worked out, you know what I mean, and it was mellow, you know. And then I got kicked out to the level 4 to the main line at Tehachapi for a minute, and I started like realizing like it was like that's when I realized like I was in prison, you know what I mean? Like I was around dudes, you know what I mean? And like seeing people's paperwork, that was like kind of a wake up call too, because you always get the paperwork check, you know what I mean? Your 128G or whatever, and it has your controlling case and all your different write ups and like, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like your driver's license kind of, you know?
Yeah.
Well, the thing there too is people like, you know, they ask you for that, but they'll show you theirs too sometimes. You know what I mean? Like here's my, and so like I'm like, you know, my shit says, you know,
stolen car,
stolen auto theft, you know what I mean? You got to write it for battery on an inmate, you know, participation in riot. Like, okay, like, you know, he's not a punk, but I was seeing other people's, and it was like double homicide, robbery, you know what I mean? Murder, 3-star, everybody there. Everybody was doing life, you know what I mean? Like nobody was getting out. Nobody was going home, you know what I mean?
You were in the big leagues.
And I was like, yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, kind of, you know, I kind of realized where I was at, you know, at that moment. And yeah, you know, just
did you have a realization like at that moment? Did it hit you and you go, "How the fuck?"
It wasn't the moment, but it was a moment for sure.
Do you have
a
moment where you go, "Wait a minute"?
Maybe. You know, I don't know. I don't know if there was like an actual. It was a process. I think it was like there was like a series of moments. You know what I mean? That led to it led to me like, you know what I mean, taking, you know, doing something different. Eventually, you know. Yeah, so they put me up for transfer to Kern Valley and New Folsom. And I ended up getting sent to New Folsom, you know, and I stayed in New Folsom for like another 14 months on B Yard there. And I saw some things on B Yard that was just
that place was rock and rolling back then.
Yeah, bro. It was it was not a fun place to be, man. It wasn't like going out to Yard and joking around and laughing. Like it was like it was like serious, you know what I mean? It was just like everybody was just scoping each other out, you know what I mean? And it was just it wasn't a.
Let me ask you a question, man.
Yeah.
When you go out in a yard like that for the first time, right? Like, what are some of the sights and sounds and feelings that you have that start to like clue you in? Like, this isn't no fun time.
Yeah, you know, I guess I got, you know, inside myself, I took myself down a couple notches, you know what I mean? Because yeah, I'd been in K-Wing, you know what I mean, and been participating in all kinds of shit, and like was in the loop, you know what I mean? People were telling me when shit was gonna happen and what was going on, and I was up in the mix, you know what I mean? And it was like, and so I was like really felt like I was a part of. When I got there, you know what I mean? It was like much more like, you know, like, oh, how much time you got left? Oh, you know, for you going home next year or something, you know what I mean? Like, all right, you know what I mean? And it was just like, here's your fucking clothing and, you know what I mean, a soup or whatever, and it's like kind of whatever, you know what I mean?
No, you're too short to even fuck with you.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I don't, like, you know what I mean? I'm like coming out like thinking like, all right, yeah, I know what time it is, you know what I mean? And you know, trying to like, you know, put myself and like not like, hey, people are like, nah, you know what I mean? Don't you know what I mean? Just do your time, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, just go home, you know what I mean? And it was kind of, and I guess it was kind of at that moment, you know what I mean? Like when I realized that like I was no longer like, you know, up, like it was a different experience from like the early part of the time. Like, I wasn't really up in the mix. You know what I mean, when something happened, I didn't know it was going to happen until 10 minutes before. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like, hey, stay away from that dude. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? And the shit that was happening was just like much more brutal, bro. You know what I mean? And just see, you know.
You know what's interesting in Clint's story so far? One of the reoccurring themes that's hit me is that he has these moments where he's in a culture. Mm-hmm. And then he's got the moments where he realizes, maybe I wasn't ever fully in. Like, there's another level to this, and I'm not in that one. You know, like, it's the neighborhoods to a certain extent. Then it's the next guys in the small town, and then it's the prisons and everything. And it's so one of the things that seems to, like, come through is that on some level, Clint, you're on your own. Really, at the end of the day, you've always been on your own, man. Right?
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it.
I want to say this, and I want to say this because it's interesting that you really made a clear point in that you were on some of these lower level yards, and it's state prison.
Yeah,
it's state prison,
right?
And you get to feeling yourself like, because you're all worried about. From the county to finally going to prison, get to prison, and if you end up on a 2 yard, something like that, or even a 1 yard, you start to like figure it out. There's no cells, this, that. You start to feel like, motherfucker. Right?
Steve's like bopping his head.
You start trying to feel yourself that you know, I was just in the county, I was doing that, like he's saying.
Yeah.
And I remember when I started getting put up on game in this shoe.
Right.
From a couple homies that were telling me, how it was, and they'd come from 4 yards and different shit. And I remember hearing, and I remember when I got to that 4 yard, and I arrived on the yard in the afternoon time, and there on 4 yards there is no night yard. Your program ends around 2. That's it. You get morning data. There is no night yard. On a 3 and everything lower, there's night yard. You get to go out at night, walk the track. 4 yard, there is no such thing as night yard. You're not allowed to come at night. So I remember rolling up onto the yard at like 4 p.m. and seeing like a tumbleweed. There was no weights. There's like a dip bar, a pull-up bar, a water. There's nothing, bro. And I remember rolling up in there. I was like, it was dead fucking silent. And you walk up into the fucking building, and it was silent. Yeah. And it was like, this is how motherfuckers are living for the rest of their lives up here. And I just remember like understanding, like these dudes are committed in to this in a whole deeper level than what I signed up for.
Yeah.
And they would tell you shit like don't even go there. Like these dudes have seen short time guys either get hauled out of there dead or catch more time. And older homies around me that was just like, just don't even fuck with these dudes.
Yeah.
Don't even enter those conversations. You're
Right.
going home. There were older cats that came up to me that met me, and they're like, "Hey, mucho gusto," and met, and it's like, take care of yourself. And they were like saying goodbye to me as they met me, right? And I kind of didn't understand. And every now and then I walk by and they act like they didn't see me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know. And I remember saying to one of my road dogs, I'm like, "Is that dude mad or whatever?" And he goes, "Nah, dude. Like some of these dudes that are doing a lot of time, they're not even going to start becoming friends with you because it makes it too difficult for them. Because then you gotta say goodbye, or they gotta watch you pack up and leave. And they don't want to see that shit. They don't want to hear about your 5 years. They don't want to hear that shit, dude. Don't even. And I remember dudes telling me, don't even say how much time you're doing.
Right.
Don't even say that shit, dude. Because me telling them I gotta be here 2-3 years, they don't want to hear that shit. So
Dude,
it's interesting how he says that you start to feel you, and you think, oh yeah, it wasn't as bad, and then you get to. And like you said, man, the things that are going on those yards, bro, is like there's no longer like you're going out there with a little fucking busted shit.
Nah, yeah.
Like, motherfucker, you're trying to kill people, bro.
Yeah. And yeah, too, that's another thing. Like, I was like, at first I was like trying to, I did this thing in the fucking R&R, you know what I mean? Like, I made my fucking bones and shit.
Yeah. You're in the fucking really getting crossed up saying,
like,
no,
bro, like these dudes got like multiple bodies on theirs and shit, you know what I'm saying? And not impressed, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I ended up getting a cool celly right there, and some of that dude that could sling ink and that had done a little bit of time, you know what I mean? That was another thing. My celly that I had, you know what I mean? He was like, he was a real funny kind of cat, you know what I mean? And he was another moment too, I think, you know what I mean? Something that I reflect back on too. He was from San Diego. And, actually, he was, I don't know. He was affiliated, I don't know if I want to say like what it was, you know what I mean? That he was with, you know what I'm saying? But he was a real humorist, like, you know what I mean? A real funny guy. And I think he was in there he had robbed some like nationalized, televised fucking, you know what I mean, sporting event, you know what I mean? Like, don't just pull out some like crazy shit that you hear about in the movies. And he would just tell me these stories about this shit that he was pulling off when he was out there. And I'm like, man, these dudes aren't even drug addicts, you know what I mean? These dudes are just doing it. Like, I was just doing shit for like, you know what I mean? Get a little something, turn it into a couple $100 or maybe even a little bit more, a couple you know what I mean?
Some of it wasn't even about what they were going to get, just the excitement of doing it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And I'm like, man, I wasn't pulling no shit like this off out there. This is like way out of my... I couldn't even begin to like sit down and plan something like this out, you know what I mean? Right. And he would just be telling me these stories, man. I'd be like, fuck, and...
Hey, Clint, let me tell you something, man. Remember Super Bowl 32? All right, man.
They keep all the money downstairs.
Man, listen, they got laser and heat, and I fucking went in. Yeah? Well, so what did you do, Clint? Well... I was in a small town called Bellevue, and I fucking, Volvo. I took a fucking screwdriver and I just jammed it right in.
Would you agree that? But would you agree that doing time on those yards with those types of convicts is like there's something to that as well?
What do you mean? Like something?
I spent most of my time on 4 yards. Is primarily was that, and after I got there and was really living on those yards, there's way more respect There's
No,
no grab ass. There's
No, yeah,
like,
no.
You know that the motherfucker you're rolling with ain't a molester.
Yeah.
Or they're like, so for me, I'm rolling on those yards kind of like I got to learn how to do time from convicts. And I got to learn.
Right.
I take a lot of stuff that I live by now, I learned from a 4-yard.
Right.
About
for
respect
sure,
and about how you carry yourself.
and just the program and everything, you know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
you know, my appearance, like, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
just, you know, the way he carries everything, you know,
Everything.
for sure. And yeah, you know, in my cell, he was just all into like working out. That's what we did. You know what I mean? I just busted down in the cell with him every day. We go out to the yard, we hit pull-ups together, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Try to, you know what I mean? Keep out of it. We didn't gamble, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't fucking get caught up in these fucking, you know what I mean? These poker games, pinochle, somebody, you know what I mean? Like, we can fucking shoot this shit in the cell, dog, but don't be fucking betting and fucking, you know what I mean? And gambling and all this shit, you know what I mean? And yeah, you know, kind of showed me how to fucking do time in that type of facility, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, that's how so yeah, you know, I made it through the rest of my time there, mostly incident free, you know what I mean? I just watched a lot, you know what I mean? I saw a lot and I just watched a lot, and you know what I mean? And I kind of sat, and you know, as I was getting ready to leave there, shit was starting to get it was starting to get kind of sketchy in there, you know what I mean? As I was paroling, because there was shit going on with other races. We owed, you know, somebody owed money, you know what I mean? And then the dude that owed the money fucking locked it up, and these dudes still want to get paid, and like all this shit was going on, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a bunch of dudes that they were turning one of the yards up in High Desert, they were turning it into a S&Y yard. So all these dudes were getting sent to this other yard, and and they were getting sent down there. So all these like more high powered dudes were coming, and the yard was just like, the whole dynamics of the yard was just like, and you could just kind of feel it, you know what I mean? Like,
it's getting more and more tension.
It's getting ugly, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm just like,
it makes my stomach hurt.
oh
dude,
man,
thinking about all that.
like, yeah, there was like, you know, like a couple weeks before I was getting ready to parole, like, dude kind of, I was like, me and my cellie were doing pull-ups, and this dude's like, hey man, you know what I mean? Keep alert right now, stay heads up, you know? And we seen the, you know, the two different races, they were having a conversation with each other, like, you know what I mean? If something goes down, like, when you run over there, and I was like, all right, you know what I mean? I'm gearing myself up for this.
You're
like, if
praying
this time,
it's not going to.
Oh, bro, I'm like, you know, like 40 days at the house, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that's when it happens. That's when that shit happens, dude.
Yeah,
You're like
man.
2 weeks from the pad.
Yeah, man.
Praying that nothing's, and then all of a sudden you get the news.
Oh, yeah.
We're about to get off with the homies tomorrow.
Yeah.
Unlock. And you're like, what's going on? Like, all right, dog, that's right, dog.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah, man.
Right.
Luckily,
The whole thing makes me upset to think about it. I start getting sick. Come on, dog. You made me real sick with all this. You're really good at drawing the fucking moment, bro.
Because it's true, dude. It's just so funny what you're saying. Like, you'd be like, the guy's like, are you down? You're like, fuck yeah, I'm done with it. And then, like, inside, you're like,
it's almost home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, I know.
You know what I want to say, too, bro, is that, and I try and explain this to people. There's something from the moment I'm getting to the county, I'm posturing a certain way.
Yeah.
And that doesn't leave me all the time, all the ways until I'm driving and I can see the prison and I'm paroling.
Right.
You feel like a tension. For me, it's in my top of my shoulders, on my neck. There's a tension that's always on when you're in prison. And you stay like that. You never relax. You never let your emotions out. And then after I was leaving, and they're like, don't look back, don't look back. And I looked back at that prison, and it was like, I felt like the tension comes out of you. Because you've been ready to go at any point for the last 3-4 years.
No, man.
Hey, Sean. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, you know, I do get what you're saying, you know, but like, honestly, I feel like, I would notice it even more when I get around like people, like normal people that ain't been there, you know what I mean? And that's when I really notice, like, getting around, like, you know, when I just going to work or something and being, and you know what I mean? Or just my mom or anybody. And I'm just, you know, and people would point out at me like, man, you like don't look very comfortable right now. You know what I mean? I'm just stressed, and I'm just like, you know, just fucking.
You're like, hey, you don't know when shit's about to go down.
Yeah.
Sean, how many times when we have somebody who's gone through an experience like Clint, the Splint, how many times does Steve say, hey, and then when I look over my shoulder and I see the prison going away, it's like, I can finally relax.
I think I've heard that a couple times.
That every time, bro, every time you remind us that, like, when you go in there, there's a certain level of, like, coiled fucking energy that's got to be there.
Right.
And you can't let that go until you can look over your shoulder and see the institution disappearing.
I remember I had gotten cracked on a case, and they let me. I wasn't on a parole hold yet, and I hadn't gotten to the joint yet.
Yeah.
And I got busted, and I get bailed out after about a month, and they say, all right, you know what? we're going to let you take care of your personal affairs for the next 60 days. And then you got to come turn yourself in, right? And I needed to go do 4 years.
God damn.
And I remember, dog, like, you know, that's a whole trip in itself.
Right.
Having to walk yourself from freedom. Usually it's like, catch me, motherfucker, right?
Yeah.
And when I went to the court, the Supreme Court, Santa Monica, I turned myself in, and like the bailiffs and the judge and everybody can see me, like hugging my wife, holding my kid, kissing my kid, and then I got to go in, right? And when I go in, I remember as soon as I go in, when when he takes me to Santa Monica Superior Court building, when I finally get cuffed up and I'm walking in, and he puts me in this holding cell, and I remember the fucking guard, the jailer, he tells me, he goes, "Hey, bro, well, you better cry now, because this is the only time you're going to be alone for a long time from now." And I remember being in this little holding cell for like 45 minutes until they were ready to start taking everybody downtown. And like in that 45 minutes, he's like, "You better cry. Get your cry on now while nobody's around, because you're not going to be alone for." And I remember, dog, that was the last time I was alone for the next fucking 4 years, you know? It's just crazy, man.
Man, that's wild, because on even that, like, I think about the guy whose job it is to be the jailer, to talk to the dudes or lock them up, take them to but whatever that is. And his thing, how many times do you think that motherfucker said that to somebody that went into that room?
Yeah, I wasn't crying for his ass.
I know, but I'm just thinking, like, what kind of a dude is taking, you know what I mean? Like, what does he do? Go home and eat a fucking hungry man dinner?
Man, you did fucking, I'm listening to this guy, like, you didn't get sentenced to, like, a crazy, but you did fucking, you spent a lot of time in.
Yeah,
he had in the juvenile shit and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all like grafted onto each other.
Dude,
it just kept
like,
growing.
You've seen as much shit as a lot of people seen. You know?
Right.
I mean, he started out in YA and winded up on a 4-level
You
yard.
don't have to do a lot of time to see a shit. You just got to land in the right places.
Damn.
So go on, partner.
Yeah.
Anyways, so anyway, I ended up getting out of there, man. So luckily, you know, nothing horrible happened, you know, right then. A couple dudes got hit that came from this other yard, that came from this other prison and shit, you know what I mean? I saw a couple of those things, you know, I was growing accustomed to seeing that type of thing, you know what I mean? And anyway, so I ended up getting out, I ended up paroling from there, you know, in 2008. So that was, kind of speed up here, but I ended up going back on a couple like little violations. Well, I actually ended up catching the case, but it was like way over prosecuted and way trumped up, as many times that it was, you know what I mean? It was in my cases, but you know, so part of me was, you know what I mean? Like, I had conversations with some of these older dudes, like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, bro, like, you're getting a second chance. Like, don't come, you know what I mean? Like, this ain't you, you know what I mean? Like, just go out there and do your thing. And so I had these seeds planted, you know what I mean? And then when I got out, you know, I ended up kind of hooking up with I was working and shit, you mean? Like, my dad was a carpenter, so I went and started working. I got a carpenter job, you know what I mean? Doing construction with my dad. I was kind of like starting to learn a trade and kind of started to get together, but I was like, started getting high again. And I was like, you know, chipping away with, you know what I mean? A little bit of dope here and there and working and not kind of fucking my paycheck off and not really saving up, you know what I mean? Kind of just doing shit like that. And, I ended up hooking up with this other crew that were doing some, like, you know, some more higher stakes type shit, you know what I mean? And I did a couple things like that, you know, and I think part of it saved me. You know what I mean? Having been on that yard, I kind of like one of the rare cases where I was able to kind of get out when I was ahead, you know what I mean? And I kind of think like, man, like, this is what I'm doing with my second chance, you know what I mean? Like, so I had these seeds planted, you know what I mean? Like, that I need to start doing something different, you know? And yeah, these dudes, and, you know, luckily, you know what I mean? I didn't end up going like too off the hook, you know what I mean? But like a couple of these dudes that I was kicking it with were just, you know, going up with, you know what I mean, waving, you know what I mean, and I went on a couple, you know what I mean, kind of ride-alongs, you know what I mean, and some of these things. And I remember like after doing those, you know what I mean, and even like getting away and just being like, what the fuck, like, why did I just do that? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have to do that. You know what I mean? Like, why? Part of me was kind of felt like I was graduating though too. Like, all right, now I'm doing some fucking like some real shit. You know what I mean? And but the other part of me was like, why? You know what I mean? Like, why? You know what I mean? But anyways, I ended up going back to jail on some fucking like super random shit, man. It was like a fucking road rage incident, right? I was with this chick that I was kicking it with, and she ended up cutting this dude off at a stop sign, and he chased us down. and followed us into this fucking parking lot and got out and was, you know, getting all aggressive, wanting to fight us. And he came, and my homeboys with me, and we both got out, and we were just telling him to get back in the car. And he was like, nah, fuck that. And he came rushing up on me, and I hit this dude in the head, and he stumbled back a little bit, and he looked at my homeboy, and he said, oh, what, you guys, you know, trying to jump me? And he pulled out a fucking blade, and he came lunging at me with this knife. And like my homeboy probably saved my life, you know what I mean? Because he was coming to take my head off of this thing. And my homeboy stepped in and cracked this dude in the mouth like mid-stride. And just broke all his teeth out. Knocked the dude on his ass, kicked the knife out in the middle of the street, kicked the knife out of his hand, you know what I mean? And my homeboy started yelling, I'm like, you stupid fuck, like, look what happened now, you know what I mean? And dude got up and like spit out like a mouthful of teeth.
Oh, shit.
It's just all over the ground, and he's going, oh, motherfucker, you know? So this thing gets reported as like some crazy thing. So then we jump back in the car with these chicks, right? And we start, and this dude like jumped behind the car and started trying to rip our license plate off the car. And you know what I mean? And she was scared, like she didn't know like what to do. So I like reached over and like put the car in gear and grabbed the wheel and like just pulled out of there, you know? And I stepped on the gas and like, get the fuck out of here. You mean, let's go. And so so like the witnesses and how it got reported that this is like super crazy fucking thing just went down in this parking lot. So I got arrested. This dude ended up pointing me out.
You run the guy over and all that.
Oh yeah, and the chicks, they didn't know if we even knew the chicks, so it got reported as. So I ended up getting arrested, getting picked up. The dude pointed me out in a lineup, and we getting charged with kidnapping, strong arm robbery, assault, battery with great bodily injury, and
mayhem. No mayhem.
No mayhem. No, not the mayhem. I don't think it was the mayhem. No. Yeah, we got this dude's medical report though, man, in our discovery, and it was like a domino effect. So one tooth went into the other, so he had to get all his teeth pulled out on like one side of his face. You know what I mean? And yeah, man, and so it got reported, as a carjacking, a kidnapping, and a strong arm robbery, and a battery with great bodily injury.
Super
right?
predator.
So I'd only been out like 5 months too. You know what I mean? And so I'm like fucking, they're like threatening us with all this time. So what luckily they ended up pulling those chicks over. They had the license plate. They ended up pulling them over and be like, hey, that's the first thing they asked when I got arrested. Like, where's the car? Where's the car at that you took? You know what I mean? All this shit. And I was like, I didn't know. I literally didn't know what they were talking about, you know? But they ended up pulling these chicks over and they were going, oh no, they didn't do that. You know what I mean? Like those were our friends, you know what I mean? And they told, you know what I mean? They told them what happened, you know what I mean? And gave them their side of the story. And I think it was those girls, their report that actually kind of saved us a little bit, because they told about how he pulled out the blade and rushed us and he was the aggressor and all this shit. I mean, so their testimony, their what they said, they didn't come testify in court, but that actually ended up helping us a little bit, you know what I mean, when we were going to court. And so and yet when it turned into this crazy. So the dude the victim or whatever, he was visiting his uncle in that town. He wasn't from that town, and his uncle was a correctional officer at Mill Creek State Prison.
Oh my god!
Like all this shit, you know what I mean? And he came and testified against us. Well, and then our defense attorneys was reading this part in the police report and like saying what happened, and the judge was like, "Well, it sounds like the victim might have committed the felony here himself." You know what I mean? And all this shit. And so we ended up both just taking a county year on that. You know what I mean? We both took a county year and got put on probation. And got out from that, and I did a couple more violations. At that point, you know what I mean? I was like, that was like one of my major moments. You know what I mean? Where I was like, fuck, man. I was like almost looking back to go. I already know my points are still up there. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have to. You know what I mean? And it's just
it's not time to gamble.
Nah, you know what I mean? And so at that point, you know what I mean? I was like really like thinking like I need to fucking like do something different. You know what I mean? And like really started like kind of like trying to make a plan. You know what I mean? To do something, but I was still kind of using and getting high, and like I did like a couple like little violations, and like we get COP'd, you know what I mean, for fucking absconding, or just like little
COP'd,
continue on parole. It's just like it's just like a turn. Like
I love when they make up new fucking crimes, absconding, mayhem,
and so fast forward a little bit, you know, I ended up doing that. I ended up turning myself into. I'd been absconding for a minute, you know. I was down in Santa Cruz with this chick, my girlfriend, and like we were just getting all strung out and doing little stupid shit.
Hey, did you ever see a guy named Kevin or Special K down in Santa Cruz?
No, it sounds familiar though, but no.
Okay, yeah, that's our intern. He went to UC Santa Cruz.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Just checking.
But yeah, you know what I mean? And it was like a really kind of frustrating time, because I was like kind of in this situation where like I needed money, you know what I mean? And the only way to get money was to go out and do something, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I wasn't really like willing to do that, you know what I mean? I wasn't really willing to like, you know, I didn't want to do that. And then the other option was just like fucking being a fucking bum, you know what I mean? And just, you know, not having shit, you know?
That's
and the other
cool.
option was just, you know, fucking turn myself in and fucking get this shit over with and just, and you know what I mean? And like really try to start doing something different, you know? So I did that. I did like a little 4-month violation. Got out and I started working in the vineyards again. You know what I mean? My nemesis, you know what I mean? My work. I ended up going back to the vineyards that I used to work in when I was a kid. And I went out there and I tracked that dude down. I was like, hey man, you know, there was nothing else going on, you know what I mean? This was like, I think it was like 2010. Like the recession was still in. All the contractors in the area didn't really want to fuck with me because I kind of had made a bad name for myself, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Showing up for a week, get a paycheck, and not coming back, you know what I mean? And I didn't have anything else, man. So I was like, hey, man, you can give me a job, you know what I mean? I'll fucking do whatever, you know?
Full circle.
And yeah, man, full circle. So I started working out in the vineyards again. This time for like $9 an hour, you know what I mean? Staying in my mom's garage. She wasn't charging me rent at that time, you know?
Wait a second, man. Wait a second. So when you find yourself back where you started,
right?
Essentially, right?
Yeah.
What was the emotional feeling for you to be like, did you go back out on the fucking prune and you're like, man...
Yeah, at first, so the dude didn't want to give me a job at first. He was like, nah, man, you ain't gonna fucking, you know what I mean? You're not gonna fucking work and shit. You don't want to do this. There's something better. Like, go, you know what I mean? You go do fucking get a construction site or go down to this company down here and ask them. And I was like, look, man, I don't got a car. You're like fucking a mile down the road from my fucking mom's house. I could walk here if I have to. It's like, I need something, you know what I mean? And so he put me on a weed eating crew at first. He didn't put me out in the fields, he didn't put me like on picking, like, you know, with the fellas, you know what I mean? With the compas out there, you know what I mean? And he put me on this like weed eating crew. And so I just had to like weed eat all these fucking rows so they can like take pictures and make brochures and shit. They would fly over with the plane and take pictures of all the rows and put them in these like winery like brochures and shit.
What kind of fucking tool did they give you for the weed eat? Was it a weed whacker?
No, like a weed eater, like the one with the motor, you know what I mean?
And did you have to fucking pull that annoying cord out of the fucking thing? I hate that.
So I did that. I did that for like a whole summer, right? We just did all these vineyards, just like acres, hundreds, thousands of acres of fucking vineyards, just weed eating fucking rows. You mean up and down the rows. And did that for a summer, and then there was a couple other like white guys on that crew that were kind of like fuck ups doing whatever, you know what I mean? All the kind of the local town drunks, you know what I mean, were fucking there and whatever, you know what I mean? I was working with them, and so we ended up finishing that job. The season was over, you know what I mean, and he was gonna let me go. He was like, "All right, man, you did a good job," you know what I mean? And I was like, "Hey, I still need something," you know what I mean? Like, I'm still trying to save up money, and so then he's like, "All right, I'll put you out there with the guys," you know what I mean? But I don't know if you want to do that, and I was like, "Fuck it, I'll do it," you know, and so yeah, I worked out. I was just picking grapes, you know what I mean? Picking grapes, pruning, doing the shit that I used to do when I was a little kid.
Did the look at you and be like, "Hey man, what the fuck are you doing?"
Oh, they were tripping, bro. They're like, "Why aren't you driving the tractor?" You know what I mean? Like, what?
Did they give you a nickname? Did they call you anything? Were they like, "Hey, here comes El Güero"?
Yeah, you know, it's just the typical ones, you know what I mean? Güero and shit like that, you know. I remember, we ended up giving this one dude a nickname though, because he ended up starting a fire. He ended up setting his weed eater down and didn't turn it off, and it started a little fire, and everybody started calling him Bomba, you know. And
Bomba. That's what we're gonna call him. Chumahan. Bomba.
Yeah, but that was kind of a cool time, man. You know what I mean? Because it was like the dudes. You know what I mean? It definitely gave me a new perspective, and I was ready to work. You know what I mean? I was like, I was not trying to fucking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go back to no shit, you know. And
what was your mom like at that time? Was she cool?
She was kind of tripping on. She wasn't really sure what I was gonna do. You know what I mean? I think she was kind of like suspicious. She's like, all right, he seems like he's doing cool, but who knows? You know what I mean?
Right.
It was kind of on. It was like, you know, she was my mom. You know what I mean? So she was letting me stay there, but I don't think that she had a lot of faith in me at that time.
Right.
You know
She knew what kind of shenanigans you could get up to.
Yeah. And yeah, I was working out there. I worked out there for like a year and a half or something like that. And then I ended up running into Steven Zifra, who was part of the Underground Scholars thing with Danny and shit. You know what I mean? He was the other dude that started Underground Scholars. And I kind of knew him, you know what I mean, through the system. You know what I mean? I never really was like friends with him, but I knew that he had done time and I had heard his name and we kind of knew of each other, but didn't really know each other, you know? And I ran into him, you know what I mean? And he was in recovery and he was doing all this stuff. And I was talking to him, you know, I was like, man, you know, I've been working out in these fucking vineyards, you know what I mean, for like fucking a year and a half, you know, making like $9 an hour. Like, I need to do something. I need to like find like I was going to like go down. I was going to try to get in the laborers union in Sacramento. I was trying to do something, you know what I mean? I had to get out of my mom's place. I was like, I needed to like make a next move, you know what I mean? And he's like, man, you should go fucking sign up for community college. And shit. I just got into UC Berkeley, you know what I mean? I just got accepted to UC Berkeley. I'm going to be a fucking English major. I'm going to go do a PhD in literature and all this shit, you know what I mean? And I was like, thinking like, I was like, well, how are you going to do that? And he broke it down to me, like the whole financial aid thing, you know what I mean? He's like, yeah, you could do this, you know what I mean? You don't got to fuck. He's like, fuck that. Fuck going and fucking working and shit. You know what I mean? He was like, get a fucking, you know what I mean? You can get, you know, you can get paid to just sit here and read and do all this shit.
Right.
And I was like, well, why are you going to do a PhD in literature? You know what I mean? Like, what's that all about? He's like, oh, you know, when I was in the SHU, when I was up in the Bay, I would just be reading fucking Shakespeare and like all this fucking old classics literature. And this is the shit that I used to read when I was locked up. And so now I'm going to do a fucking PhD in it and I'm going to be an English professor. And I was like, thinking like, fuck, I did that too. You know what I mean? I read a fucking shitload of books when I was locked up too. I was like,
does any one of those stand out to you?
What the
books that you read? Is there one that you're like, yeah, I like that one?
Well, this part of the culture, there's like kind of a self-education culture like in the shoe too. You know what I mean? Like all the different races read like different types of things. You know what I mean? Like the Chicanos, like they're interested in like Aztec history. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This type of stuff, Mayan. You know what I mean? Pyramids and. Each race has its own type of thing. And so like the whites, you know what I mean? We're, is part of like kind of this white supremacist kind of like onda, you know what I mean? And so we were reading like Beowulf and like studying like Norse mythology and like all this shit. And, so I had read Beowulf, you know what I mean? I had read Beowulf when I was in Tehachapi. Somebody shot me Beowulf and like some Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet.
Sure.
And so so I went with that and I went into the community college to the fucking academic council and I was like, I'm going to be a PhD in English.
Just like your boy said.
I was like, sign me up for the fucking the English PhD.
Right. Sign me up for the English PhD.
Yeah, sign me up for that one. That's the one I want.
That's the one.
Hey, and the counselor was looking at me. He was like, literature, huh? He was like, you're going to do a PhD. Oh, okay. Are you sure about that? You know what I mean? Like, what makes you think that? And I was just like super honest, like no filter. I was like, oh yeah, I was in prison. I read all these books and I was locked up. And this dude was just like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? And yeah, man, I declared a literature major there. Let
me guess. Your favorite book is Grapes of Wrath.
It's a good book.
Yeah.
And another one, Under the Feet of Jesus, Helena Veramontes.
Yeah.
Under the Feet of Jesus.
Under the Feet of Jesus. Yeah,
I'm currently, believe it or not, reading Don Quixote.
Oh yeah.
Are you?
I'm reading it, and I gotta tell you,
bro.
that shit is fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
So you're getting your literature degree now?
Yeah. So I started going to community college there. That was in Folsom. That was at Folsom Lake College. And I did I went to school there for about a year. I moved out of my mom's place. I moved into a room with somebody that was renting a room and shit, you know what I mean? I was still working out in the vineyards like on the weekends, like part-time for a little bit of extra cash or whatever,
Yeah.
And then I ended up moving back to Santa Cruz. Well, my grandma was living down in Santa Cruz. I skipped over some shit. I actually went to high school in Santa Cruz for like a year while I was out before I turned 18, before I went back to Placerville and got arrested again. But my grandma, she was doing really bad. I had an aunt down there and a little cousin, and they were all doing really bad. My grandma, it was kind of a fucked up story. My grandma ended up homeless in Santa Cruz and shit. You know what I mean? She was married to this dude who had a bunch of property. And he had like 14 acres up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, a real nice place. But he had been taking out all kinds of loans on it and like all this shit. And he died, he passed away.
Reverse mortgages.
He passed away, you know what I mean? And my grandma ended up losing that place up there,
It's fucked up.
And yeah, so she ended up, my mom and she, my grandma was a partier too. You know what I mean? I partied with my grandma. And
did you?
Oh yeah. No,
what was her drink of choice? Like, what did she like?
She drank a lot of wine. You know what I mean? She was all about the wine.
You're like, Grandma, you see that wine you're drinking? I probably picked the grapes that made that wine right there, Grandma.
Yeah, no, man. I mean, bro. Anyways, so she ended up losing that place, and she was like staying like in an RV down there. My mom offered to let her come live with us, but she didn't want to come up there. I mean, she lived in Santa Cruz and San Jose like her whole life. She's like, this is my home. I'm not fucking, and everything's just like so expensive down there. You know what I mean? All the houses are like fucking million. There's no, you know what I mean? She didn't have nothing, and so she was like, she was basically homeless down there. Well, she had gotten in to finally she had been on the wait list for like 2 years down there and gotten into like a Section 8 for senior citizens or whatever, you know what I mean? And but she was like kind of fucking, she was like not taking care of the place, you know what I mean? She wasn't clean, like the people, her social worker were coming and checking on her, and she wasn't, you know what I mean? She was having a hard time, you know what I mean? So I decided I was going to move. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to move back to Santa Cruz, get out of like my old town, you know what I mean? Like a kind of a
change of scenery,
go help my grandma out, you know what I mean? And that's what I did, and I went down to Santa Cruz and I rolled into the community college down there. And was living down there, and coming by after school, you know what I mean? After I get out of class, checking on my grandma, making dinner, you know what I mean? Having dinner with her, you know what I mean? Listening to like her whole stories and shit. That was a kind of a cool little time right there. I ended up buying a sailboat actually down there. I ended up living on a sailboat for like 2.5, like almost like 3 years. I lived in this little sailboat down there in Santa Cruz.
Just like Crockett from Miami Vice.
Yeah.
Right on, man.
And, I bought a sailboat, was staying on a sailboat. It was a good time. And then, met my daughter's mom, you know what I mean? And she got pregnant, you know what I mean? Had a daughter there. And, so around this time, so this is how I ended up getting hooked up with Underground Scholars and Danny Murillo and all these cats, when I was getting ready to transfer, I was like almost done with like my degree and, in my AA degree in literature. And, I was getting ready to transfer. I was applying to different schools, to Berkeley and UCLA and all these different schools, the hunger strike started happening. You know what I mean? The Pelican Bay hunger strike started happening, and I heard about this, and my friend Steven, he was already at Berkeley, you know what I mean? And I was in communication with him because I was like following him. Like he's telling me like, yeah, I did this and that. This is how I got in the Cal. So I was like in constant communication with him, and we were really good friends, you know what I mean? I established a really good friendship with him. And you know what I mean? And he started telling me, he's like, yeah, man, you know what I mean? He showed me the agreement to end hostilities. Like, what do you think about this? You know? And I read it, and at first I was like, I don't know about this. You know what I mean? I didn't even really believe it at first. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I had known dudes that had gotten validation cases put on them, you know what I mean? I've seen dudes just get snatched up off the yard and fucking disappear, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Had not even done nothing, you know what I mean? And I knew that there were just dudes, and I'd been in the shoe with dudes that had been in there for fucking years and fucking decades, you know what I mean? And so I was like, we're gonna mobilize around this out here, you know what I mean? We're gonna be in solidarity, with the hunger strikers. And like, I'm starting this like formerly incarcerated group up there, and he was like going to all these different, you know what I mean, events, and was plugged in with this whole abolitionist scene in the Bay Area. And I was like, all right, you know what I mean? So like, I'm with it, so I started a little student organization there at Cabrillo College. I sought out, some formerly incarcerated people there on that campus, and like, hey, the hunger, like we're gonna start, having some rallies and some events on campus to raise awareness about what's going on up there right now, because it's not getting a lot of media play, and you know what I mean. So we're gonna we're gonna take up this issue on our campus, you know what I mean. And I ended up finding a professor there, a community college professor there, she was a woman. She had been to prison. She had done prison time in Texas, and now she's a community college professor at this community college. I found her, you know what I mean, and we put this whole little organization together, you know what I mean, and we started a little group there at Cabrillo College, and the Student Solidarity Coalition or something like that, I think is what we called it, and we had some events, you know what I mean, and we would go to the events in the Bay Area, and I got plugged in with this group in Santa Cruz called Barrios Unidos, and they had like this, they had like this whole trailer, like this whole prison trailer. It was like an assimilation, like a model of like the shoe. It was like a U-Haul trailer, but they had turned it into like a Pelican Bay shoe, and they had like a little iPod, you know what I mean, with the music, with the doors clanging and like all the different noises and shit, you know what I mean. And so they were like, we had them bring that trailer out onto the Cabrillo campus and had like a whole event around it, you know what I mean. And
could people go in there and get a little experience?
Yeah. And I had paroled, you know what I mean. I had brought my prison clothes with me when I paroled. I snuck them out, you know what I mean, my blues. Yeah. You know what I mean. And so I donated my blues to there, so they had like the blues all up in the prison cell, you know what I mean. And it was like this whole little thing, and like a lot of dudes were like sending them artwork and letters and poetry, and so they had like a whole like an event, like an expo at the Santa Cruz History Museum, the Natural History Museum in Santa Cruz. We had all of the prisoners' art in there and shit, you know what I mean, all the dudes, and you know what I mean. I was like, looking at people's names. Some of the names seemed kind of familiar that were signing the artwork, like, oh, I think I might have heard about that dude or knew that dude, and people were, wanting to ask us questions, and so like that's kind of how I got into that scene. And then I went up to UC Berkeley and I met Danny Murillo, and they had like the underground scholars thing was taking off up there, and I plugged into that scene right there, and that was a very transformational, like that was definitely like a moment, you know what I mean. And now, like at that point, you know what I mean, it wasn't just about like, getting a degree and like changing my life, you know what I mean. There was kind of a political aspect of that too. I started, coming into, being introduced to like terms like abolition, and you know what I mean, and you know what I mean, and really kind of having to like interrogate like my politics, you know what I mean, and like where I had come from, you know what I mean, and this like scene that I had come from, you know what I mean, and it was man. So that's how I got there, And
so for anybody that's listening that may have been in any stage of your life, what advice, what suggestion, let's say, in your opinion, would you give that person to maybe not go as far down the road that you went?
Shit, man. If it happens, you know what I mean, just try to hang on. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know, man. I hate to give people advice because what worked for me might not work for somebody else. You know what I mean?
What worked for you?
For me, it was knowing that, like, you know what I mean? I wasn't, you know what I mean? Knowing kind of like what was up, and you mean what I was going to have to go back to, and like the things that I was going to have to do, and like not really willing to do that kind of shit anymore. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't like, that's not, you know what I mean? I started wanting, you know what I mean? I wanted some things and shit, some people that I grew up with that hadn't gone down the road that I had were doing kind of okay. You know what I mean? I wanted a little bit of that too, to a certain extent, Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
Man, dude.
Right.
Where are you at? Where are you living at today?
So I'm in Santa Barbara. Yeah, I'm in a PhD program at UCSB, and in the
living the good life over in Santa Barbara.
Oh, that's another thing I was going to say too, right? A point that I was going to follow back up on. You know what I mean? It was kind of a moment it was kind of like another one of these moments. You know, when I was at Berkeley, so the dude that I had gotten, you know what I mean? The dude that we got, that, you know what I mean? My homeboy, you know what I mean? That
the sandwich. He was eating a sandwich.
Exactly, Mr. Sandwich. You know what I mean? So, you know, I remember, you know, one thing I was going to say about this, you know what I mean? When I got to the level 4 yard and I started seeing what it was like in my head, you know what I mean? It might sound kind of fucked up, but in my head, I was like, man, we should have got that dude better. You know what I mean? Like, I could have really fucking got that dude. You know what I mean? I really could have fucking that could have been a good one. You know what I mean? I was like thinking that in my head, and I always think about that. And even after I was out, you know what I mean? I always think like, man, that was like some weak, you know what I mean? I could have fucking, like, there was nobody around. There was no guard. We could have really dealt with that, you know? And I remember I was thinking about this one time, and I was reminiscing on that, and I was applying to PhD programs. I was writing my personal statement and my research statement, and I was, you know, writing all these programs. And that dude sent me a message. He had been gotten out, you know what I mean? And he sent me a message on Facebook. He was like, hey, man, I seen that you're doing really good. I seen the pictures of your daughter and shit, you know what I mean? I just want to say, like, I'm happy for you and shit, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I was thinking in my head, like, fuck, you know what I mean? And I started looking through his Facebook pictures, and I seen he was like, you know, had a kid now, and he was like working, you know what I mean? And he was just living a normal life, you know what I mean? And like with his mom, you know, all these family pictures and shit. And I remember thinking like, man, you know, like, I'm really glad that I didn't do something fucking worse to this dude, you know what I mean? Like, I'm glad that I'm not the reason that, you know what I mean, that he didn't have that opportunity to fucking to do something, you know what I mean, to turn his fucking shit around, you know? And that was, you know, that was definitely like, and yeah, you know, and just thinking like, here I am, you know what I mean, living the fucking good life, getting in PhD program, all kinds of scholarships, doing interviews and shit, you know what I mean? And you know what I mean, kind of, you know, to a certain extent, cashing in on like my experience a little bit, you know what I mean? And then like, here's this dude, like, you know, come from my, you know, hey, you know, I send mine, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I just want you to know, no hard feelings and shit. And I was like, fuck, man, like, my bad, you know what I mean? You know, it was like, you know, I apologize, you know what I mean? Hey, we're just doing what we had to do, you know, and, thinking about that, so like if I had to give someone advice, you know what I mean? So like I think of like what would I have done something different, you know what I mean, in that type of incident? And I'm not so sure that I would have, you know what I mean? But I would have at least I think I would have gave him a heads up, you know what I mean? I would have said like, hey, don't come out or something, you know what I mean? Maybe. And if he didn't hear that, maybe I would have probably still done what I did, you know what I mean? But I might have given him that much, you know what I mean? And yeah, man.
That was.
Well, I want to ask you, what do you want to do eventually with these degrees? In a perfect world, what would you like to do with this education at your?
Yeah. So you know what I mean. The goal with the PhD is, you know, I'm gonna, you know, end up getting some type of academic position somewhere. You know what I mean? Be a professor. I'd like to, you know, work at a Cal State, work at a CSU. You know what I mean? And teach literature. You know. That's another thing. I was going to talk a little bit about my research, you know. So I study like prison literature, like that's my thing, you know what I mean? Prison autobiographies and prison memoirs and stuff like that. Yeah.
Do you consider MLK's books to be prison literature?
Oh, definitely, absolutely. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so yeah, I'm doing that. But you know, like there's different types of jobs. Like I'm actually applying for a job right now, which I'm probably not going to get, but I'm just kind of putting a feeler out there. With there's a spot that opened up with the college program at San Quentin. They've had the prison university project there for years, and they just turned it into something else. And there's like an academic program director job there. You know what I mean? It's not really a teaching position. It's kind of an administrative position, like overseeing a team of like instructors and stuff like that. Right. So a job like that, you know what I mean? Or a professor job, you know, there's various little things that I could do. There's different types of fields that I can go into, you know what I mean? As a PhD. And so I'm thinking about stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Great,
I think what better professor than to have a guy who actually lived life, right?
Yeah.
And learned from it, and then went on to read literature. So I tip the fucking hat to you, my friend.
I'm into that too, man. I like reading other prison literature.
Yeah. So like the discourse, you mean like people like scholars of prison literature that read this stuff, you know what I mean? They the argument is like these like these themes of redemption, you know what I mean? These redemption tropes reinforce this ideology of the prison. So this is like kind of the critique, right? That like, because like that's because the prison is an ideological institution, right? The whole idea of prison is they're going to put you in this little cell and you're going to get right with God and you're going to convert and redemption, you know what I mean? And so then like when a lot of these prisoners, they write these stories and they conform to that type of narrative kind of, you know what I mean? And so it reinforces this whole, it validates the prison, right? Even though at the same time it offers the kind of a critique to it. A lot of them show the horrible things that happen in there and just the tragic fucking stories and like all this shit that happens in there. You know what I mean? And so like where I'm coming in, like my intervention is that you know, it varies like that while that might be true a little bit, the way that redemption is negotiated really varies depending on the author's kind of race, right? And so like, you know, with like, you know, a lot of like Black and African-American prison memoir, whether it's Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or George Jackson, redemption is negotiated more like in political terms, you know what I mean? It's like coming to consciousness about like, you know, they understand like they were out there fighting against the community. Now they're going to get out there and fight for the community. And it's like, and so it's a redemption in that way where it's like kind of this like political kind of awakening. You mean like where Malcolm X learned how to read. He taught himself how to read with the thing, which ended up allowing him to convert to Islam, and he came out and became a community organizer. You know what I mean? And so it wasn't like
the redemption for the African American, you're saying, tends to have like a political bite because it's about how an African American becomes awake and how they got put in those circumstances in the first place, and they're going to come back to community. So then that's an interesting point. And then so if you move it to, let's say, white, what's the difference between that and white redemption literature?
Well, I was going to say with the Chicanos first. I'll say that the white too. So with the Chicanos, it's more like this cultural thing. With like one example is like Jimmy Santiago Baca. He's a poet. You know what I mean? He did time back in Arizona in the 70s, and he talks about going to the prison and seeing these OGs with the Aztec calendars and the feathers and like all this stuff and like learning his indigenous kind of roots and like and having this like cultural awakening. You know what I mean?
Right.
And really disidentifying with this whole with this white and like making connections between the colonial system and the prison system and these and you know what I mean? This historical development, you know what I mean, of this history and really disidentifying with the system, but still kind of positing the prison as the site where this transformation took place, though, right? Whereas with the white prisoners, it does tend to be a more kind of stereotypical religious, spiritual. Once I was bad, now I'm good. I found Jesus or whatever. You know what I mean?
Christianity, generally,
and let me back into normative society now. You know what I mean? And so like I'm like looking at like I'm wondering. So you know when I was like I said when I was in the SHU, I was reading like Shakespeare and Beowulf, and I know like a lot of Chicano dudes were reading, you know, different types of stuff and a lot of black, or whatever, Art of War, Sun Tzu, stuff like that. You know what I mean? And different stuff, and you know, and so each race has kind of their own political education type of thing going on, right? So I'm looking at like how that culture in there, which a lot of these scholars don't even know about, let alone write about it. You know what I mean? How that might influence the way that the language of redemption is negotiated in prisoner memoirs and stuff. You know what I mean? And then really looking at like how, you know, but then also like, you know, offering a little bit of a critique about those ideologies in general, those different like kind of racial categories, how it keeps these prisoners separated at the level of letters too. You know what I mean? There's not like, you know, in most genres of literature, there's an element of solidarity within like the discourse itself, whether it's Chicano literature or African American, like there's different genres, ethnic, you know what I mean? Groups of literature, even if it's like, you know, queer Chicano literature or regular Chicano literature or whatever, you know what I mean? And there's an element of understanding and cohesion, you know what I mean, and consistency with some of the ideology, you know what I mean, as far as like each book has its own kind of worldview, you know what I mean. There's some cohesion between various different genres, whereas in prison literature you don't really get that, you know what I mean. There's some overlapping tropes, you know what I mean, and themes and stuff like that, but the ideology of these various books, especially based on race, are very muddled, you know what I mean, and mixed, and you know, taking that and looking at, you know, what happened with the hunger strikes, you know what I mean, and how these different groups came together to fight the system and really get shit changed, you know what I mean, and get solitary confinement ended, and it resulted in a Supreme Court case. And looking at that as a model for political action, for direct action. I mean, when we think about this stuff that's going on in the streets right now, this movement against police violence and cops killing each other, you know what I mean, and there's so much discord, there's so much disagreement between these various groups and these organizations, you know what I mean. You got, you know, Black Lives Matter, a movement on one hand, you got, you know, the Chicano and indigenous movement that's talking about land back, and none of them seem to agree with each other, you know what I mean. You got like, you know, the critique, well, the Black Lives Matter, well, they're not talking about kids in cages at the border and shit like that. You know what I mean? Well, you know, then the Black Lives Matter, well, you know, these Chicanos and these indigenous movement, they're not talking about reparations for slavery, you know what I mean? Oh, well, you know what I mean? And, well, then, you know, the indigenous people are saying, well, they're not talking about land. Where are they going to get this 40 acres in a mill? You know what I mean? This is our land. And so there's this, all this kind of like, there's this like disagreement canceling. So there's not
but
really.
You're also.
Right.
What about poor whites?
Oh, and you know,
right.
and
Poor
you got
whites
these,
are left out of the conversation.
Oh, right, yeah, you got, you know, these, you know, dudes out in Appalachia, you know what I mean? With
right.
They're getting their coal mining jobs taken away and like all this.
Or
you know,
that's all they get is a coal mining job,
exactly,
and that rich
right?
fucker ain't sharing
right.
shit
and
with
that's,
them.
And that's one thing almost everybody agrees on is fuck these fucking poor white racist ass fucking honkies and shit. You know what I mean? Like, we don't even, they're not even part of the conversation. Like, fuck these dudes, you know?
Right, and in reality, you're going to need to bring everybody under the tent to affect some real change.
Right, you know what I mean? And so, like, looking at that, you know what I mean? And using the hunger strikes as kind of a model, you know what I mean? When we're thinking about these different movements against, you know what I mean, ending state violence, something as simple as that, something that we can all get on board with, that's something that we've all got experience with. We've all been fucked over by law enforcement or the DA or a fucking judge at some point in our life got done dirty. You mean, that's something that I don't care where you're from. If you're from any kind of working class community, you can agree on that at least. You know what I mean? But there's no really kind of clear path forward to how to remedy this, you know what I mean? And what type of action to take against this. And nobody. That's
been the core critique of a lot of the political movements have been, great, Occupy Wall Street. Right. I'm all for it, right? Let's melt the fucker down. Right. But what's the plan the day after? Right. So what are we going to go to? Right. And it seems like the political activated people generally are good at protesting a little bit, getting pissed off, but then there's no plan after that. Right. What are we going to do? And then it just falls back to the same old shit.
Right. And yeah, you know, so I'm kind of trying to tie all that together, you know what I mean? That's what my dissertation work is on. And looking at the prisoner hunger strikes and looking at how this racial culture that exists in prison influences this language of redemption and prison and memoir, and what we can learn about that, you know what I mean, when it comes to mobilization and action against, you know, mobilizing against, you know, state violence and you know, fucking scantless ass fucking pigs, you know.
I was thinking about that as you were talking about it. I was thinking there's also a fertile area for analysis in how does the structure of prison itself create the separations as well? Like if it was a mixed community, or the way there were bars and all of these gates and separations and cells between people, that space has already got you thinking like, all right, I'm in a narrow category of whatever. Right. And then the race dialogue fits neatly into that. Right. So the actual material outside world is replicating a way of thinking and analysis and connecting with the ideology of race. And like you say, it's reinforcing it.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, you know, like that culture, it doesn't just reinforce a prison system. It reinforces the whole fucking social structure and the whole social system, you know?
And that's what I was, you know, Big Lep was just in here and he's a very, energetic dude. Yeah. And he was talking about how do we get to a place where, you know, we're celebrating community service at the same level we celebrate, you know, social media advertising things or whatever, right? And I told him, I'm like, bro, that there's no the structural change that has to be in society, and it has to be at the base foundational level, right? So then, since we're here and you've done some thinking about it, here we are, right? What is finances, jobs, the future in the next 20 years as you see the way opportunities are now looking? Like, where do you see us evolving to?
Like broader society, you know?
In general, yeah, because, you know, right now we're looking at COVID shutdown. We're looking at jobs are probably never going to be whatever they were. We're looking at Bitcoin, digital currencies. Yeah. Right? We're looking at all that kind of stuff. Do you see, is there anything that's coming to your mind as to like where you think we might be heading?
It might be ugly. It might be ugly. I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't want to make any predictions. You know what I mean? And, but I don't know, man. I don't know if I see fucking Biden getting elected for. I mean, all this shit that he's been promised, it's all going out the window. You know what I mean? As we knew it was going to. You know what I mean? All these they're negotiating about it, and wanting to, you know, bipartisanship with the Republicans. It's like, why, bro? You know what I mean? Like, why? You know what I mean? It's like the Republicans do whatever the fuck they want. You know what I'm saying? They do whatever they want. And then as soon as the Democrats get power, it's like, oh, well, we got to get this co-signed. I mean, we got to go get this co-signed. You know what I mean? And it's just, I don't know, man. As far as like where we're going, man, it could be ugly. It could just be a lot more of this. It could just be a lot more frustration,
nonsense,
just a lot more nonsense and frustration, and and people not really being able to get their shit together. To really mobilize against some of these things.
Because they won't give you a chance to mobilize. You can't even get any footing under your feet.
We were just talking about in the last show that 1,400 grocery workers unionized. They struck, and they got more money, and they got their health care paid for by their company. And then when the Marxist, the leading Marxists in the United States put that post on Facebook, Facebook banned it.
Oh, right.
Sean, where are we going? You've heard everything now. You're obviously the wise one. You have the salt and pepper beard. You discovered Split's pretzels.
That's true.
You have a discerning mind. What is the future
That
going to
gold
hold?
rolled gold.
Yeah, that was my bad.
You're good. You like them. Yeah. But they're not rolled gold, and that's not the other one. But go ahead. Where are we going?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could go either way.
It could go either way. I could have told you. Go ahead, Sean. What could happen? Don't get mad, John. What could happen? Anything could happen.
Yeah, I mean, what am I going to tell you? You're not going to laugh at.
Oh, don't get like that.
He's like, oh, he's getting mad. Yeah, no. Like, what? I am?
No, because you get that look on your face. You're like, Steve, where are we going?
I don't know. I mean, there's so much of what we're just talking about. I was talking about on Wednesday night with my daughter. We got into a long conversation. And she said, yeah, Dad, you're right. History shows us that there's going to have to be blood in the streets. But that's a scary thought, my daughter's telling me.
Man.
I don't want to see that. That's scary. I don't want that to,
Nobody wants it to happen.
And I said, it is. I go, but, maybe we are so special that we can really pull a rabbit out of a hat. Maybe we are that good. Maybe people will come together. But there's a good chance that this thing might have to get some blood in the streets. And I might have to get some blood on my hands.
Well, you got some on this morning.
I got some on this morning.
Listen, the thing is I'm right now in the middle of a book called God's Bankers. God's Bankers. If you got a chance to read that, do it. Audible, do it, whatever, right? But basically, this reporter goes in and he traces the Catholic Church's rise of their banking system and everything else.
Dude.
All right?
What?
Yeah. It's a fantastic read. And it's an eye-opener.
Is it real?
And it's real. And it's not a secret. He's not talking about Illuminati.
Right.
He's not talking about blah, blah, blah. He's talking about, first and foremost...
Are they the biggest financial institution in
They're
the world?
one of them.
One of them.
I'll tell you this much. Where I'm at in the thing, they've already taken out 3 loans from the Rothschilds. The Catholic Church had to take out in the 1800s loans from the biggest Jewish banking system in the entire world. And they weren't none too happy about it. There were certain people within the church that were none too happy about this.
Wow.
When Mussolini, so listen, I'll just lay this out and I'm going to leave it here, right? When Mussolini starts coming to power negotiating, the Vatican had lost the papal states. It was like a monarchy, except instead of a king, it was a religious figure who was voted on every so often. To think about that for a second. Just think about it. I'm not against Christianity and all that. I'm just saying, think about a territorial country that is controlled by a monarch who is next in line to God, who gets voted on by cardinals. That's how he gets selected. Okay, that hasn't changed. That's still the same. Okay. Then when all of the states start coming into appearance in Europe in like the 1800s, when they really start to take on the sort of modern nation, right, thing that we've got going on right now, right? Mm-hmm. And the secular Italy state starts to take place. All of a sudden, a lot of Italians in Italy are saying, why the fuck does the church have all this fucking land and control and blah, blah? And there's eventually most of the Vatican's... territories get seized and it becomes part of Italy. for about 100 years, a couple of the popes were constantly battling the Italian government to get that property back. And in the eyes of the popes, that rightfully belongs to the church. And when somebody named Mussolini, a fascist, starts rising in power around that World War II-ish type of thing, right? And he needs a cosign. But the cosigner wants a deal.
Get me back my property and we'll roll with you.
And that's what starts to happen. And I don't know yet because I haven't gone that much further in the book. But you can see very clearly.
Did Mussolini became a big enough figure, he was able to give them their land? He was able to call that shot?
Not only that, but they backstabbed each other at a certain point, and eventually the church didn't get exactly everything back, but they got enough stuff back. And the church also got named, the Pope became like inviolate or whatever, which basically means he can't be prosecuted by the Italian government. Okay. There were certain privileges and things that were given back. Abso-fucking-lutely.
Okay.
But my point being is that, and I'm not necessarily saying it's only the Catholics, although the Catholic Church definitely got busted a couple times working with the Germans and working with the Italian fascists, and used the Catholic diplomacy. They have special rules within the Catholic Church. Like, you and I have to have a passport. If you have a Vatican passport, and this is not made up. Okay. You don't have to go through the same hoops that you and I have to go through.
Right.
You don't get stopped. You don't get questioned. A couple of the spies and stuff
is that like diplomatic
immunity.
Right.
Some of the guys that were working for the bad guys in World War II or World War I definitely used the Catholic Church to get escaped out. In fact, I think we should do an entire show just on the Angel of Death and the groups in South America that came after World War II, because I was shocked. Part of this book talks a little bit about it. I was absolutely shocked at how much was going on. Anyway, my point being, the Catholic Church worked with individuals who gained power and legitimized their rule in order to get back privileges and money that was taken from them by democratic governments. I'm telling you, you read this book, God's Bankers, your eyes will be wide open. And this is why I'm saying to Clint, like, I mean, and even Big Lep, I'm like, man, this thing's deeper than just, we need to have a good news story instead of always looking at the bad news. How come no one wants to report on the good news? Motherfucker, because we're raised in a society that is fueled and fed by bad news.
Bad behavior.
Bad news, man. And you can start to see how a criminal element eventually becomes the government. And then you don't question a lot of different things, which is why you and I have that conversation a lot about history is just a lot of history is just a discussion of different crimes.
Hell yeah. Like you said, all these saints, even the dudes following Jesus, they were murderers and killers and
criminals,
you know?
And yet,
but now
enough time has passed. So you and Clint's only fucking problem was that you committed the crime in the current time.
Yeah, if we would have committed these crimes back in like 1400, we'd be saints today. We would be Robin Hoods. Listen, we're going to wrap this show up, man. Listen, Clint, bro, man, good luck, brother, with what you're doing, man. You are, that's a 180, a full 180, man. And I'm glad to meet you. I'm glad to have you here down here.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me.
Fuck, bro, what a story, man. It's awesome, brother. And do you have an Instagram account or a Facebook or somewhere people can find you?
Yeah, I got an IG account. It's just CJ Terrell, CEEJ. Oh, well, I guess I just put my name out there, huh?
That's all right. Yeah.
It's all good, but I follow the show. Yeah, I have a Facebook account. Yeah, I even got a meme page. I got a blood in, blood out meme page.
Okay, all right.
It's got like it's kind of meme. It's kind of political humor mixed with some blood in, blood out scenes.
Okay, all right.
That's a joke that I always like to tell. That thing that happened in the Boys Ranch. If they would have just shown blood in, blood out instead of American Me, it probably would all been good.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Exactly. Thank you, dog. And we're going to make sure we tag Underground Scholars.
Yeah.
I'll get everything right for your post.
Danny Murillo.
Hell yeah.
Danny Murillo.
Big
Thank you.
shout
Big
out.
shout out to Danny Murillo and the Underground Scholars and making this happen today with having Clint come down.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Yeah. What do you got, Steve, real quick?
I got supermaxhardware.com. Go pay us a visit. Cookies family. Check out Cookies. Vibes Rolling Papers, the Vibes family. Soul Assassins, Esteban Oreo. My Kids, the City of Santa Monica. And keep your ears and eyes open for H2K.
All right. Big shout out to Uncle Bob. Big shout out to El Machigan. Big shout out to my wife. I love you. Happy Valentine's Day, baby. I got us a nice little hotel room for Sunday. I want to say a big shout out to Anthony Romero, Mr. T93, Rich Garcia, Darren Craig, Matt Rawls, Alfredo Vasquez, Spider, C's, El Californio, Alex Sanchez, Calco 552, Taco Johnny. Big shout out to Sean Allen Lewis. It's going to come for you, buddy. Sam Flores, El Rompe Costillas, Alex DFWE. That's Big Tim, Tiny Tim. And all of our other listeners, man, big shout out. Thank you very much. You know what law firm I run.
Sean,
all right, good. Sean
at hardluckshow.com.
All right.
Like we do about this time.
Adios,
amigos.
This is Derek's O'Reilly Auto Parts story.
After the third time jump-starting my car, I finally realized my battery was dying. So I stopped by O'Reilly to have it checked. They tested it right there in the parking lot. It was bad, real bad. But they helped me find the right battery for my car and even installed it for free. Now my car starts like new.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
What you doing?
Designing my new 2021 Nissan Kicks online in the Kicks Color Studio. I give each a special name. This one's electric blue, orange, red, white. I call it the gumball machine. You think it's me?
I feel like you're more of a red velvet guy.
Limitless possibilities. With over 100 million available color combinations and Bose Personal Plus system in the boldly new 2021 Nissan Kicks. Bose is a registered trademark of the Bose Corporation. Color combinations include interior and exterior colors. Customization is an available feature subject to availability at participating Nissan dealers. See dealer for details.